Chapter 26:19. Bailey Hongzhuang rested in the Wuji Palace for a few days. She and Di Beichen were also cultivating on the sky stairway. Since they were about to head to the Lan family, the stronger they were, the better. Even if they couldn't improve much in a short period of time, it was still good to stabilize their cultivation. Bailey Hongzhuang had broken through too quickly during the Battle of Zhuolu, so her foundation wasn't stable enough. However, after a month of cultivation in the Yu family, her foundation was once again stabilized. Now that she had a good foundation, she would be able to improve greatly in the divine pond of ice and snow. Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't very clear about the value of the divine pond of ice and snow, but as a member of the Lan family, Lan Yinxiao was naturally very familiar with the family's treasures. From Lan Yinxiao's explanation, Bailey Hongzhuang understood that the divine pond of ice and snow contained a very special kind of energy. Not only could it increase a cultivator's strength, but it could also reduce the difficulty of breaking through to the purple realm. The blue realm and purple realm seemed to be the same realm, but breaking through to the purple realm was the most difficult of all. Many geniuses were stuck at the blue realm 9th level, unable to break through no matter how hard they tried. Only a few rare treasures in the world could be of help. Thus, the divine pond of ice and snow alone was enough to make all the major powers scramble for it. The divine pond of ice and snow was also one of the Lan family's foundations. Because of the divine pond of ice and snow, the Lan family's cultivators had a higher chance of breaking through to the purple realm than other families' cultivators. As long as there was one more purple realm expert, the family's strength would increase by a lot. This was also one of the reasons why the Lan family had been ranked among the top families for so many years. In many people's eyes, the Lan family was an extremely lucky family. Not only did they have the divine pond of ice and snow, they also had a mysterious inheritance like the rainbow pearl. These two treasures were enough to stabilize the Lan family's position. If one's cultivation hasn't reached the blue realm 9th level when entering the divine pond of ice and snow, will it still be useful? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Lan Yinxiao nodded with a faint smile. It's still effective, but the closer you are to the 9th level of the blue realm, the greater the effect. Even if there is some difference, this energy will remain in the cultivator's body. When the time comes to break through to the purple realm, this energy will be of some help. This divine pond of ice and snow is indeed magical. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. Nature was indeed full of wonders. Anything could be born. These kinds of wondrous items were often of great help to cultivators, but it was impossible to identify the source. It is indeed not easy to break through to the purple realm. This bottleneck is much more difficult than the bottlenecks of other realms. Di Beichen's handsome face was slightly cold. He had already felt this during this period of time. During the Battle of Zhuolu, he had already broken through to Blue Realm level 9. However, during this period of time, he only felt that the origin energy stored in his body was constantly increasing, but the bottleneck showed no signs of loosening. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation since he started cultivating. No matter how he tried to break through, the bottleneck remained as stable as Mount Tai, making him feel a sense of defeat. Beichen, you've been in Blue Realm level 9 for a while now, right? Chapter 26:20. Di Beichen nodded slightly, his dark eyes twinkling. He had long heard that breaking through to the purple realm wasn't easy unless one had a certain amount of luck. Now, it seemed that this saying wasn't the least bit exaggerated. There are quite a few Blue Realm cultivators in the Shengxian continent, but the number of purple realm cultivators is much lower. This must be the reason. Di Beichen smiled. Although his strength hadn't improved for so long, this didn't affect Di Beichen's mood. Beichen, although your current cultivation won't loosen the bottleneck, the more energy you store in your body, the more stable your foundation will be. You'll have a higher chance of successfully breaking through in the divine pond of ice. Lan Yinxiao clearly understood this situation very well. What he was doing now seemed to be useless, but in reality, it was still helpful to a certain extent. The purple realm was the most difficult bottleneck for cultivators to break through. Once one broke through, it would be a brand new realm. But if one couldn't break through, they would forever be stuck at the 9th level of the Blue Realm. The longer one remained stuck, the lower the chance of successfully breaking through in the future. Lan Yunxiao had seen many cultivators who had stopped at the 9th level of the Blue Realm. Because the large aristocratic families had abundant cultivation resources, as long as the cultivator's talent wasn't bad, they could still break through to the 9th level of the Blue Realm with the help of the family. But to break through to the Purple Realm, the cultivator had to rely on themselves. I understand. Di Beichen understood and engraved Lan Yunxiao's suggestion in his heart. Currently, he had no other choice but to continue cultivating like this. Many cultivators would choose to go out and train when they couldn't break through a bottleneck, or find a chance to break through at the edge of life and death. He had to go take a look at the divine pond of ice first. If it could help him break through, that would be the best. If it couldn't, then he would have to find another way. Lan Yunxiao was also a genius in cultivation. Back then, he had broken through to the Purple Realm with the help of the divine pond of ice and snow, which was why he was so familiar with the use of the divine pond of ice and snow. Normally, there were countless forces that coveted the Lan family's divine ice pool. However, the Lan family was powerful enough to dispel their covetous thoughts. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally knew how difficult it was to break through to the Purple Realm. Now that an opportunity like the divine pond of ice had presented itself before her, she had to work hard to improve her cultivation during this period of time. Fortunately, 1 month of cultivation in the Stairway to Heaven was equivalent to 10 months of cultivation in the outside world. During this period of time, her strength should be able to improve by another step. She was now at Blue Realm level 7. Once she broke through to Blue Realm level 8, she would gain more benefits. However, Bailey Hongzhuang left Limitless Palace with Di Beichen after cultivating for 5 days. According to Bailey Hongzhuang's judgment, Ji Lixue and the others should have arrived at the place she had mentioned earlier. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't let Ji Lixue head directly to Limitless Palace. Instead, she brought her to a village not far from Limitless Palace. Although she was very confident in her judgment, she couldn't guarantee that something unexpected would happen. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen arrived, Ji Lixue and the others had already arrived. Ji Lixue, why did you bring us here? The group of doctors and poison masters couldn't help feeling puzzled when they saw that Di Beichen didn't bring them to any forces and instead brought them to a remote mountain forest. Chapter 26-21. Ji Lixue was also puzzled by the situation in front of her. She looked left and right, and it didn't seem like a good place to go. However, Xin Yi had no reason to lie to her, so she firmly believed it. Everyone calm down. Let's wait for a while. Ji Lixue couldn't give an answer to everyone's question because even she didn't know where they were going. The only thing she could do now was to wait for Xin Yi to come and pick them up. Otherwise, she wouldn't know how to solve this problem. Everyone looked at Ji Lixue doubtfully, but since Ji Lixue wasn't willing to say, they had no other choice. Since they were already here and had rushed for such a long time, everyone was exhausted. If they left without waiting for any results, wouldn't it be a wasted trip? Everyone sat down on the ground one after another. Complaints rose and fell one after another. They weren't complaining about Ji Lixue, but they were deeply moved by their encounters during this period of time. Doctors and poison masters weren't cultivators, so their physiques couldn't be compared to cultivators. After rushing for such a long time, everyone was exhausted. If it wasn't for the fact that they wanted to find a good place to go, they wouldn't have been able to resist the urge to rest halfway. They didn't expect to see such a deep forest after rushing with all their might. They couldn't help but feel depressed. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were observing Ji Lixue and the others from a distance. Bailey Hongzhuang was familiar with many of the doctors in front of them. Among them were many of the newly recruited doctors and poison masters that the Yu clan had left in the clan and hadn't sent out. These doctors and poison masters were talents that everyone would be happy to recruit. The Yu clan had no choice but to leave them behind. If it wasn't for the fact that their clan was destroyed and they had to seek help from the Lan clan, the Yu clan wouldn't be willing to leave them behind. Of course, the most depressed people were this group of people. The number of people that Jila Xue had brought was more than what Bailey Hongzhuang had expected. If they could recruit these people back to Limitless Palace, it would undoubtedly be a good thing. Although it would take some time to develop, with Bailey Hongzhuang, who was even more skilled than Yu Siqing in the art of medicine and poison, none of this would be a problem. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun did not go out immediately. They had to find out if there were any spies from the Yu clan. After all, these people had stayed in the Yu clan for a period of time. Even if the Yu clan's actions this time had hurt a lot of people's hearts, it didn't mean that there weren't people who were loyal to the Yu clan. If Limitless Palace were to recruit this kind of person, it would undoubtedly be troublesome. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun needed to pay more attention to him. And in this kind of waiting, when everyone was full of resentment, this kind of emotion was the easiest to erupt. Hence, Bailey Hongzhuang and Lin Yiqian sat quietly at the side and watched as everyone waited in boredom. Meanwhile, the voices of disdain grew louder and louder. Jila Xue, why did you bring us here? There's obviously nothing here. In my opinion, we might as well wait near Yutian City. The Yu clan wouldn't just leave us behind like this. As long as the Yu clan recovers a bit, they might come and find us. After all, we have already stayed in the Yu clan for so long. Chapter 26-22. Most of them had a lot of resentment towards the Yu clan's actions this time. It was because they believed in the Yu clan that they would travel thousands of miles to become a member of the Yu clan. They didn't expect that the Yu clan would abandon them without even saying a word. If their reaction wasn't fast enough, they might have already been infected by the plague. Thinking back, they were still a little scared. The Yu clan's actions were too despicable. They did not care about their lives at all. One must know that they had previously treated the poisoned Yu clan disciples under Yu Siqing's orders. They never thought that they would end up like this. Many of them had already made up their minds. Even if the Yu clan made a comeback in the future and summoned them back, they would not care at all. There was no point in going to such a heartless clan. There are still people who are loyal to the Yu clan. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. It seemed like it was necessary for them to stay here and watch the show. Otherwise, once they went to Limitless Palace, it would not be easy to find these people. Most of the newly recruited people have resentment in their hearts. However, those who have stayed in the Yu clan for a long time might still be loyal to the Yu clan. Di Beichun's eyes were filled with confidence. He glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang and said, "These people will jump out one by one very soon." They would cultivate while watching the show. At the same time, they would remember the names of the doctors and poison masters who were loyal to the Yu clan. When the time came, they would directly get rid of them. Jila Xue also felt powerless when she saw the crowd arguing. The situation was already very bad. She never thought that the two sides would still disagree with each other. However, her thoughts were the same as most people. Originally, Yu Siqing was her belief. However, it was because she had believed in her for so many years that one day, when she realized that it was not what she had imagined, her heart could not accept it. The depth of love, the depth of hatred. Now, not only was she unwilling to have anything to do with the Yu clan, she was even unwilling to mention the belief she had in the Yu clan. This was because it was too ironic. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. As time gradually passed, they did not see any changes. Everyone could not hold back anymore. Jila Xue, you didn't say anything after bringing us here. What exactly are we doing? We've been waiting here for a few days, but nothing happened. You're not lying to us, are you? It's such a desolate place. It's obvious that there won't be any forces here. What kind of place is this? The anger that had accumulated over the past 3 days exploded at this moment, and everyone pointed their spears at Jila Xue. Most importantly, if Jila Xue told them the reason, it would be easier for them to judge. Now that Jila Xue didn't say anything and just let them stay here, everyone was confused. It was really not a good feeling. Jila Xue furrowed her brows. She hadn't expected things to turn out this way. However, after thinking about it, she still felt that it was best not to tell them about Xianyi. After all, Xianyi had caused this disaster. Although it was revenge, it had indeed affected everyone. If he said it out loud, he was afraid that everyone would become even more agitated. Chapter 26-23. When Ji Lishue had a conflict with them, with Di Beichen's character, he would have just killed such indifferent people. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had chosen to let them go. Later on, Bailey Hongzhuang had told him that other than the conflict, Ji Lishue was a very good person. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang had become Yu Siqing's direct disciple, Di Beichen had never seen Ji Lishue again. Judging from Ji Lishue's current performance, she was indeed a good person. Until now, she had not pushed all the blame onto Xian Yi, but had taken on the pressure herself. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. After so many years of experience, I still have the ability to discern. If everyone believes me, then continue to wait. If not, then leave. Ji Lishue muttered to herself for a long while before saying, "Don't worry." Now, she could not be sure of everything. No one knew what the outcome would be. Even if she explained, she could not find a reasonable answer. It was better to not say anything and let everyone make their own choice. After hearing Ji Lishue's words, the people who were originally angry felt as if their fists had punched cotton. With Ji Lishue's attitude, it was meaningless for them to make a fuss. "I'll leave first." Fu Addy's face was full of anger. With her medical skills, she would definitely be able to go to other large forces. Even if she did not have the opportunity now, it would not be a problem for her to go to an ordinary force. Why should she wait here foolishly? In her opinion, Ji Lishue was simply deliberately messing with them. As Fu Addy took the lead to stand up, a few people in Fu Addy's group also stood up and chose to leave together. Seeing this, Ji Lishue frowned but did not say anything. Fu Addy snorted and said, "Let's go." When the others saw Fu Addy leave, their hearts were also shaken. However, compared to following Fu Addy, it was better to follow Ji Lishue. At least, their thoughts were the same as Ji Lishue's. They could almost conclude that Fu Addy and the others still wanted to rely on the Yu clan. Not long after Fu Addy and the others left, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's figures slowly appeared in front of everyone. Everyone saw two peerless figures walking out of the Green Mountains, as if they were people from a painting. They could not help but wonder if this was real. The woman wore a long white dress that could not hide her extraordinary temperament. Her features were like a painting, exquisite and perfect, like the most exquisite masterpiece of the heavens, floating like a fairy. Beside the woman was a handsome man with a calm and distant expression. His handsome eyebrows carried a handsome smile, but it could not hide the sharp light in his eyes. The two walked side by side, as if they were an immortal couple. Everyone looked at the two people who suddenly appeared. They could not help but be stunned. To be, they were the people who had come to pick them. Them. People, be. Thinking of this, everyone could not help but feel excited. Ji Lishue also sized up the two people in front of her. She did not know why, but she felt that the woman in front of her was somewhat familiar. However, she still erased this thought. The other party was so outstanding. If she had seen them before, she would not have forgotten them. However, were they arranged by Xian Yi to pick them up? Chapter 26-24. Bailey Hongzhuang stood in front of Ji Lishue and the others. Originally, she was prepared to tell everyone her identity, but after hearing everyone's discussion these few days, she decided not to. Although the grudge between her and the Yu clan was deep, and it was normal for the Yu clan to fall into such a situation, she had indeed harmed the interests of others. At this time, if she were to say that she was Xian Yi, everyone would probably find it hard to accept. Rather than that, she might as well tell them in the future. Once everyone found a better place to go, they would naturally not care about these problems. "Welcome, doctors and poison masters." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and said, "Now that the Yu clan has suffered a calamity, everyone must be looking for a place to go. What do you think of the Limitless Palace?" Bailey Hongzhuang went straight to the point. At this time, there was no use in saying anything else. It would be better for both sides to make things clear. Originally, everyone was still doubting if Bailey Hongzhuang was here to pick them up, but after hearing her words, their eyes lit up. Limitless Palace. That was an extremely powerful sect. They had never thought that Ji Lishue would bring them to such a good place, the Limitless Palace. Once they became a member of the sect, wouldn't it be like a carp leaping through the dragon's gate? Even if the Limitless Palace's foundation was shallow, their strength could not be underestimated. This was a great opportunity. Everyone looked at Ji Lishue with joy. They never thought that Ji Lishue would bring them to such a good place. Previously, they had treated Ji Lishue in such a manner. It was truly inexcusable. Ji Lishue, we said those words because we didn't know. Don't take it to heart. Yeah, you should have told us about such a good opportunity. You actually let us misunderstand you. I never thought that you would be so powerful. You actually have a relationship with the Limitless Palace. At this moment, everyone looked at Ji Lishue in a different light. The Limitless Palace was the champion of the Battle of Zhuolu. In a short period of time, their name had spread far and wide. The current Limitless Palace was different from the past. Many people were racking their brains to enter the Limitless Palace. When the results of the Battle of Zhuolu came out, many people were shocked. They were all secretly envious. If there was a day when they could enter the Limitless Palace, it would be an incredible identity. At first, they thought that after the Yu clan had encountered such a situation, their situation was already very bad. They never thought that there would be a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. Now, there was actually such a good opportunity in front of them. At this moment, Ji Lishue was also dumbfounded. She had chosen to believe in Xian Yi, which was why she had come here. However, she had never thought that she would not see Xian Yi here. Instead, she had seen people from Limitless Palace. Could it be that Xian Yi had some sort of relationship with the people from Limitless Palace? Ji Lishue couldn't help but exclaim. She had long guessed that Xian Yi's background wasn't simple, but she didn't expect her to have such a relationship with Limitless Palace. No wonder Xian Yi didn't seem to care about Yuruilin. To think that she had maintained her status in front of Xian Yi. In fact, Xian Yi didn't even care about her background. Thinking of this, Ji Lishue couldn't help but feel a little ashamed. She had really displayed her slight skill in front of an expert. Chapter 26-25. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun stood quietly at the same spot. Looking at the changing emotions of the crowd, a faint and gentle smile appeared on their faces. Today, Limitless Palace's reputation had spread far and wide. 2 days ago, Bailey Hongzhuang heard from Nangong Wu that the number of disciples who wanted to enter Limitless Palace had greatly increased. As a competition between the major forces, the results of the battle for supremacy would have a huge impact every time. Compared to the previous times when Limitless Palace recruited disciples, this time was undoubtedly much livelier. And Bailey Hongzhuang was the biggest contributor to this. This lady, may I know who you are? Although Ji Lishue was happy to be able to enter Limitless Palace, they didn't even know who the other party was. To be able to bring such a large group of people into Limitless Palace, it wasn't something an ordinary person could do. The moment she said that, everyone's gaze landed on Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. So, Ji Lishue didn't know the two people in front of her. Then, could the other party be lying to them? Limitless Palace was a place where ordinary people could enter as they wished. I'm the young palace mistress of Limitless Palace, Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Her beautiful eyes were as clear as water as she calmly revealed her true identity. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Ji Lishue and everyone present were stunned. They looked at the beautiful woman in front of them in disbelief. Their hearts were filled with admiration. Heavens, she's Bailey Hongzhuang, the young palace mistress of Limitless Palace. We're actually so lucky to meet the young palace mistress of Limitless Palace. This time, the battle for supremacy was led by Bailey Hongzhuang. She obtained the first place. She's worthy of being called a genius. Everyone present had long heard of Bailey Hongzhuang's name, but they didn't expect to have the opportunity to see her in person. It was truly amazing. Limitless Palace's young palace master. There was a huge gap between their identities. They never thought that they would have the opportunity to speak with the young palace master of Limitless Palace. Furthermore, the young palace master of Limitless Palace had personally come to pick them up. Just thinking about it made them feel like they were dreaming. Ji Lishue couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. She was even more confused now. Who exactly was Xian Yi? To be able to get Limitless Palace's young palace master to pick them up, This was simply too unbelievable. Right now, Jilishue only hoped that she could see the announcement as soon as possible so that she could understand the reason behind all this. Let me say something. If everyone is determined to become a part of my limitless palace, then in the future, treat limitless palace wholeheartedly. If they had second thoughts, or if they wanted to return to the U clan, they could leave now. Otherwise, if you have such thoughts after reaching limitless palace, things won't be so simple anymore. A sharp glint flashed across Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful eyes. Her voice gradually sharpened. She directly made the situation clear. In the future, she would be too lazy to think about such things. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's cold words, everyone couldn't help but shiver. If they wanted to go to a better place, they naturally had to remember some things. In this world, everything had two sides. I wonder if we can learn better medical skills in Limitless Palace? Jilishue couldn't help but ask. Chapter 26. Limitless Palace was a large sect, and its position in the Shengxian continent was self-evident. However, she had never heard of Limitless Palace's development in the field of medicine and poison. If she could only become a doctor in Limitless Palace without learning any exquisite medical skills, then there would be a gap between what she had imagined. After all, she had wanted to come to Xianyi's place to take a look because she felt that Xianyi must have a master who was better than Yu Siqing in the field of medicine and poison. If she could follow such a master, even if she could not be accepted as a personal disciple, as long as she could learn some superficial knowledge, it would be enough for her to use for the rest of her life. Hearing Jilishue's words, the doctors and poison masters present could not help but frown. For the current them, most of them just wanted to find a better place to go, which was much better than wandering outside. As for whether or not they could learn more advanced medical and poison skills, it was not what they cared about the most. Everyone knew that Limitless Palace had only been established in the Shengxian continent for a short period of time, and they still lacked talents in many aspects. In terms of medical and poison skills, just thinking about it was enough to know. However, this situation had a certain advantage for them. Because there were fewer people, they would have an advantage if they went first. Wasn't Jilishue poking at his sore spot? If Limitless Palace did not have anyone, then wouldn't they not be able to go? Bailey Hongzhuang did not find Jilishue's question strange at all. She had been with Jilishue for such a long time, so she understood Jilishue's thoughts very well. This fellow had an obsession with medical skills that ordinary people could not understand. She only wanted to learn better medical skills. However, this kind of person was usually simpler. Let's not talk about other things. At the very least, we have someone in Limitless Palace who is better than Yu Siqing in medical and poison skills. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. When she mentioned Yu Siqing, her expression revealed traces of disdain. Yu Siqing claimed to be a master of medicine and poison, but in the end, didn't she leave with her tail between her legs? When she said that, Jilishue and the rest's expression changed. They had never heard that Limitless Palace had such a master of medicine and poison. Jilishue's eyes gradually lit up. She suddenly understood that Xian should be someone from Limitless Palace, and the master behind Xian was most likely the person that Bailey Hongzhuang mentioned. If that was the case, then Limitless Palace was a better place for them than the Yu clan. At least, since the establishment of Limitless Palace, its reputation had always been good. Everyone present did not doubt Bailey Hongzhuang's words. The dignified Limitless Palace's young palace lord's words could not possibly be false. Palace Master, we palace's masters' palace. Limitless Palace, Palace, Limitless Palace. Of Limitless Palace. Of Limitless Palace, Limitless and Limitless Palace, Limitless Palace, Limitless. Limitless as everyone expressed their stance one after another, feeling that the exhaustion from these days was nothing. The Yu clan had encountered such a calamity, leaving them behind. This might have been predestined. The previous calamity was not a calamity at all. Everything was for their current fortune. Chapter 26. The current situation did not exceed Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's expectations. With Limitless Palace's current reputation, they believed that no one would reject Limitless Palace's recruitment. The current Yu clan was no longer as glorious as before. Between the two, anyone would choose Limitless Palace, and they did not need to worry that these people would think of the Yu clan. In fact, between the two, as long as one was not stupid, they would know what to choose. Since that's the case, let's set off. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. She did not plan to spend too much time on this matter. She still had to return to Limitless Palace to cultivate. With that, Ji Lixue and the others immediately followed Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. They also wanted to see how strong Limitless Palace was. Not long after Bailey Hongzhuang and the others left, Fu Adi and the others who had left earlier came back. They hadn't gone very far before. After all, it wasn't easy to walk back in the deep mountains and forests. Just as they were discussing what to do, they suddenly heard a loud voice coming from this side. It was surprisingly consistent, but because there was a certain distance between them, they did not hear clearly what they were saying. With doubts in their minds, they walked back to take a look. After all, they were still very curious about why Ji Lixue had brought them here. However, when they returned to their original position, they found that everyone had already left. What happened just now? Why are they all gone? We didn't leave for long. We didn't see them leave. Could it be that they went deep into the forest? Could it be that someone came to pick them up? We waited for so long, but no one appeared. Could it be that the other party appeared right after we left? Fu Adi and the others' faces were extremely ugly. If that was really the case, they would have suffered a great loss. After waiting for so long, there was no news at all. They had just left, and the other party appeared? Fu Adi and the others could not help but search around the vicinity. However, in this forest, they did not know where Ji Lixue and the others had left from. As they were not cultivators, they naturally could not chase after them. They could only secretly feel vexed. When Ji Lixue and the others arrived at the Limitless Palace, they were stunned when they saw the shocking scene. So this is the Limitless Palace. What a magnificent sight. Everyone looked at this scene in shock. Compared to the Yu clan, this Limitless Palace was much more imposing. Young Palace Master. When the group of Limitless Palace's disciples saw Bailey Hongzhuang, they immediately greeted her. At the same time, they looked at the group of people behind Bailey Hongzhuang in puzzlement. They didn't know what these people were here for. When Ji Lixue and the others saw this scene, they naturally did not dare to doubt Bailey Hongzhuang's identity. Speaking of which, being able to have Limitless Palace's young palace master lead them up the mountain was already a supreme honor. Bailey Hongzhuang handed Ji Lixue and the others over to the elders. She didn't need to worry about the rest. A few days ago, after she had told her master and mistress about these matters, her master and mistress had already sent people to make arrangements. The Limitless Palace also had doctors and poison masters, but there weren't many of them. Now that Ji Lixue and the others were here, they could make up for it. Chapter 26-28. After Ji Lixue and the others settled down in Limitless Palace, Yu Linfeng also recruited 2 powerful doctors and poison masters to teach Ji Lixue and the others the art of healing and poison. Originally, there were still some deficiencies in this area, but with the Yu clan's medical books, this problem quietly disappeared. Moreover, learning the art of healing and poison wasn't something that could be completed in a short period of time. When the disciples of Limitless Palace found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had actually recruited a group of doctors and poison masters, they couldn't help but be surprised. Their young palace master was really resourceful. Even this kind of thing could be done so easily. At first, everyone didn't feel much. However, as cultivators, it was inevitable for them to get injured. Healing pills were extremely precious, so everyone was quite frugal on normal days. Ever since they had doctors to treat them for free, it was a great help to them. Although poison masters weren't of much use on normal days, if they could obtain some poisons when they went out to train, it would be of great use at critical moments. Long Xianjing and the others had always admired Bailey Hongzhuang. Now that they had Bailey Hongzhuang, Limitless Palace was like a tiger that had grown wings. When they recruited some new disciples next year, they could imagine that Limitless Palace would develop better and better in the future. However, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't appear in front of the other disciples after this. Bailey Hongzhuang was busy cultivating on the Heaven Stairway. She had to work hard to reach the 8th level of the Blue Realm before she went to the Lan clan. Only by reaching a higher level could she obtain more benefits from the divine pond of ice and snow. Moreover, she didn't have much time to continue cultivating. Soon, she would have to go to the Lan clan again. When Yuman Lan and the people of the Yu clan appeared in front of the Lan clan members, the Lan clan members couldn't react for a moment. They didn't understand the situation in front of them. Lan Jingquang and the Lan clan elders stared blankly at the Yu clan in front of them. What happened? Yuman Lan looked at Lan Jingquang with a slightly awkward expression. She didn't know how to explain the situation to Lan Jingquang. Father-in-law, let's go in first. Even though he was full of doubts, Lan Jingquang could only temporarily suppress it in his heart. He couldn't let Yu Taotian and the others wait outside the door. Yu Taotian nodded and led the group of Yu clan elders into the Lan clan. Before Lan Jingquang left, he gave Yuman Lan a look that contained a hint of warning. He was already terribly busy in the Lan clan. He didn't expect such a situation to happen. Although he didn't know what had happened, he could only hope that there wouldn't be any more trouble. He could only hope that there wouldn't be any trouble. Since the Yu clan master had suddenly arrived, the Lan clan master, Lan Hongtai, couldn't continue his closed-door training anymore, so he followed him to the assembly hall. But of. Chapter 26-29. Yuman Lan panicked. She knew that Lan Jingquang would be angry when he found out. However, she couldn't control what had happened. It was as if from the beginning until now, the initiative was either in Lan Jingquang's hands or the Yu clan's hands. Her thoughts were completely meaningless. Right now, Lan Jingquang didn't have the time. If he did, she could imagine being scolded by Lan Jingquang again. This feeling was really unbearable. Yuman Lan couldn't help but think of Mu Lingbing. Back when Lan Yunxiao was so glorious, Mu Lingbing's words also carried a certain weight. Even when Lan Yunxiao and Yuman Lan were imprisoned for so long, Lan Yunxiao still protected Mu Lingbing. She just couldn't understand why the gap between her and Mu Lingbing was so big. Lan Clan, Conference Hall. When Lan Hongtai arrived at the conference hall, he found it full of Lan and Yu clan elders. With a quick glance, Lan Hongtai was sure that all the elders of the Yu clan were here. Along the way, Lan Hongtai listened to Lan Boron's report and had some doubts. The Yu clan had mobilized so many people. It looked like they were fleeing for their lives. However, the Yu clan was such a huge clan. It was strange to think about it. Yu Taotian hurriedly stood up when he saw Lan Hongtai. His face was full of smiles. Lan clan head, sorry to disturb you today. You're too polite. We welcome you with open arms. There was a faint smile on Lan Hongtai's face, but his eyes showed a bit of alienation. These years, he spent most of his time in seclusion and didn't pay much attention to ordinary matters. When Lan Jingquang married Yuman Lan, he had a good impression of the Yu clan. However, after the incident with Lan Yunxiao, the Yu clan and Lan Jingquang joined forces and left Lan Yishuan in the lurch. Just this alone filled him with dissatisfaction and resentment towards the Yu clan. If Lan Yunxiao hadn't colluded with the Yu clan, then the incident wouldn't have happened. When he came out of seclusion and found out about this, he had already fallen out with Yu Taotian. This was a conspiracy between the Yu clan and Lan Jingquang. It was inevitable that they would be very unhappy with each other. Both sides were also looking at each other coldly. According to his plan, he wanted to draw a line between himself and the Yu clan and never have any contact with them again. However, Lan Yunxiao's departure had already dealt a blow to the Lan family's reputation. If they were to draw a line with the Yu family, the Lan family situation would be even worse. At that time, Lan Jingquang had already expected Lan Hongtai's attitude, so he joined forces with the other elders to resist. Under such circumstances, Lan Hongtai, as the patriarch, could not go against the wishes of all the elders. He could only put this matter aside. However, all these years, they had always been at odds with each other on the surface. The smiles on their faces at this moment were just perfunctory. Clan Master Yu, I wonder if something has happened for all of you to come here together? As the great elder of the Lan clan, Lan Borong was the first to ask. The other party had brought a large group of people with him. That didn't seem right. Chapter 2630. It's a long story. As Yu Taotian spoke, he couldn't help but look at Lan Jingquang. He was very clear about his relationship with Lan Hongtai. Fortunately, Lan Jingquang's position in the Lan clan was not low. As long as Lan Jingquang was willing to help, the Yu clan would have no problem staying in the Lan clan. Our Yu clan has suffered a huge blow this time. Yu Taotian slowly told them about what had happened to the Yu clan. They couldn't hide this news, even if they wanted to. However, it had only been a short time since the incident happened. Hence, many forces had not received the news yet. Moreover, they had traveled very quickly on their way here. They were afraid that others would know about this news. If they would be surrounded and intercepted on the way, the situation would be terrible. In fact, they had been worried the entire time on their journey. However, they were relieved when they reached the Lan clan. Now that they were here, their enemies wouldn't be able to take this opportunity to attack them. After Yu Taotian told them about what had happened in the Yu clan, Lan Hongtai and the elders of the Lan clan couldn't help but change their expressions. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. The other party had just infiltrated the Yu clan, and the entire Yu clan had collapsed. Some of them couldn't help but swallow their saliva. The other party's methods were too shocking. The Lan clan had been in close contact with the Yu clan all these years. They were very clear about the Yu clan's background and power. They didn't expect the other party to break it so easily. If this news were spread, the entire Shangxian continent would be shaken. Such an opponent was simply too terrifying. The scariest thing was that the Yu clan was already in such a state, and they still didn't know who their opponent was. The so-called Xian, he was obviously not the other party's real name. In the vast Shangxian continent, it was like looking for a needle in a haystack to find such a person. Originally, the Lan clan members were speechless when they saw so many people coming to the Yu clan. Now that they knew that these were all the remaining people of the Yu clan, they felt that there were too few people left. In such a large cultivation aristocratic family, the number of direct descendants and branch descendants was extremely large. Now that there were only a few people left, the Yu clan had suffered a huge blow. When Lan Jingquang heard all of this, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. This was like a bolt from the blue, making his situation even worse. Lan Qingyan's injuries had not healed for a long time. When he returned to the Lan clan, he had to deal with some elders who had other ideas. Luckily, he still had the Yu clan as a helper. Who would have thought that not only would the Yu clan not be able to help him, they would even become his burden? Wouldn't this make his situation even more difficult? The other party's poison technique is so powerful that even Grandmaster Yu Siqing is unable to neutralize it. Yu clan's second elder, Lan Kaiqing, still felt that this matter was a little unimaginable. Wasn't Yu Siqing known as the #1 person in the art of medicine and poison? If it was a violent attack, the Yu clan might not be able to block it. However, with Yu Siqing in charge, there should be no need to be afraid of poison. Hearing Lan Kaiqing's words, Yu Siqing's expression was a little awkward. Chapter 2631. The other party's poison skills are a level higher than mine. Although she didn't want to admit it, it didn't matter if she didn't admit it at this point. Following Yu Siqing's words, the expressions of the Lan clan members changed again. They couldn't help but ponder. In this case, they had many things to consider. Even Yu Siqing couldn't compare to the other party's poison skills. If the other party wanted to kill the entire Yu clan, it would be impossible to guard against it. No matter what, no one should underestimate the strength of a poison master, especially a poison master who had reached the pinnacle of the art of poison. By the time one noticed the other party's poison, it would already be too late. They didn't know how the Yu clan provoked such a terrifying poison master, but at least the Lan clan didn't want to provoke him. Now that the Yu clan had come to the Lan clan, if the poison master wasn't willing to let them go, wouldn't the Lan clan be in trouble? For a moment, the expressions of the Lan clan elders kept changing. This was big trouble. After hearing all this, Lan Hongtai felt a little happy in his heart. All these years, the Yu clan relied on their powerful poison skills to be extremely arrogant. There were many cases of them harming others. Now, retribution had come. He didn't have any pity for the Yu clan. Ever since the Yu clan extended their evil claws to Lan Yunxiao, all the affection between them had disappeared. Lan Jingquang and his people were all dumbfounded. Who would have thought that the situation would be so serious? This was a malignant tumor that could explode at any time. Lan Jingquang's face was as gloomy as water. His pitch-black eyes were even more oppressive. Lan clan head, we have been allies for so many years. Now that we are in trouble, you have to help us. Yu Taotian had no choice but to put down his pride. If the Lan clan didn't help now, they really didn't know what to do. The Lan clan elders all looked at Lan Hongtai. At this time, it was obvious that Lan Hongtai had to make the decision. Yu clan head, the trouble you have caused this time is too big. With the strength of the Lan clan, I'm afraid it will be difficult to resist. Lan Hongtai's expression was calm and unhurried. It was just like how the Yu clan didn't save his granddaughter. It wasn't that he didn't want to take revenge, but that it wasn't time yet. This karmic cycle was really interesting. Back then, the Yu clan had also rejected many people like this. As soon as Lan Hongtai said that, Yu Taotian's expression changed drastically. His eyes turned gloomy, and it was hard to tell if he was happy or angry. In his heart, he was cursing Lan Hongtai, the bastard. However, with the current situation of the Yu clan, he had no other choice but to seek help from the Lan clan. He could only beg for their help. Yu Siqing frowned as a fierce look appeared in her black eyes. Lan family head, all these years, our Yu clan has helped you a lot. Now that we're in trouble, you're burning the bridge after crossing the river. Isn't this a little unreasonable? Hearing this, Lan Hongtai couldn't help but sneer. Grandmaster Yu Siqing, it seems that the number of treasures you've taken from our Lan family has only increased. As early as 19 years ago, Lan Hongtai no longer wanted to pay attention to this so-called in-law. However, due to the opinions of his family members, he could only endure it. Now that things had come to this, he naturally didn't want to bother with them. Chapter 2632. Following Lan Hongtai's words, Yu Siqing's face turned cold. Anger was brewing in her eyes, as if she would explode at any moment. Lan Jingquang, what do you say about this? Seeing that Lan Hongtai was unwilling to respond, Yu Taotian could only turn his attention to Lan Jingquang. He was furious. As the Yu clan head, when had he ever suffered such humiliation? If Lan Jingquang was more capable and became the Lan clan head, he wouldn't have to give in to Lan Hongtai. They had already helped where they could. They thought that after getting rid of Lan Yunxiao, this new problem, Lan Jingquang would be able to become the clan head without any mishaps. They didn't expect Lan Hongtai to be so stubborn and unwilling to let Lan Jingquang become the clan head. All these years, although Lan Jingquang's position in the Lan clan wasn't much different from that of the clan head, there was still a gap. At least, Lan Jingquang couldn't be the clan head at this time. Seeing that Yu Taotian had turned the question to him, Lan Jingquang was conflicted. Under such circumstances, if he agreed, it would undoubtedly bring trouble to the entire Lan clan. If he didn't agree, Yu Taotian wouldn't let it go. Lan Hongtai's expression was indifferent. This matter was caused by Lan Jingquang himself. As for this son, he didn't have any feelings for him after that incident. Even Lan Hongtai himself found it hard to accept that he had such a cruel and merciless son. Father-in-law, this, Lan Jingquang muttered to himself. This matter had happened too suddenly. He didn't know how to deal with it at the moment. The Lan clan situation was unpredictable. If he didn't handle it carefully, there would be trouble. Yu Taotian's expression turned uglier when he saw that Lan Jingquang was also hesitating. Lan Jingquang, our Yu clan has helped you so much. If you burn the bridge after crossing the river, you're too despicable. Hearing Yu Taotian's accusation, Lan Jingquang hurriedly said, Father-in-law, this matter happened too suddenly. We need time to think about it. His mind was in a mess, and he didn't know how to make a decision. When Yu Taotian saw that Lan Jingquang was still somewhat fearful of him, his gloomy face became slightly better. In the end, everyone from the Yu clan stayed in the Lan clan for the time being, while the elders of the Lan clan had to properly discuss how to deal with this matter. No one wanted to get involved in such a big trouble. However, the relationship between the Yu clan and them had always been good. If they just ignored it like this, it would be detrimental to their reputation. Patriarch, now that the Yu clan's people are here, if we just chase them away like this, wouldn't we be too heartless? Lan Jingquang looked at Lan Hongtai awkwardly. He had no other choice. Lan Hongtai's face was cold. I have already said that I will draw a clear line with the Yu clan. It was you who kept saying that we should keep in touch. Now do you know what it means to eat your own medicine? His words were clearly aimed at Lan Jingquang. The other elders who had supported Lan Jingquang back then were silent as well. Chapter 26:33. At this moment, everyone on Lan Hongtai's side expressed that they could not let the Yu clan stay in the Lan clan. Otherwise, there would be endless trouble. Lan Jingquang's face turned ugly when he heard what Lan Borong and the others said. Now that all the problems were concentrated on him, if he couldn't come up with a compromise plan, it would really be a disaster for both sides if word got out. Lan Jingquang could not help but look at second elder Lan Kaiqing. At this time, it was obvious that he could not rely on himself. Lan Kaiqing saw Lan Jingquang's eyes and immediately said, "Clan head, Master Quang is right. Now, the Yu clan has all come. If we let them see us like this, once word gets out, our Lan clan will be labeled as heartless and unrighteous." With second elder Lan Kaiqing taking the lead to express his stance, the elders of this faction also expressed their stance one after another. Although they were also worried about the Lan clan situation, this was a time of internal and external troubles. Nan Xingyan's injuries had not recovered yet. If they drove the Lan clan away, the situation would be even worse. Other than Lan Jingquang's loyal followers, most of the elders expressed their opposition. Even if word gets out, it will be bad for our Lan clan's reputation. It is still better than offending an extremely powerful poison master. That's right, that poison master is so powerful. Once he targets us, our situation will not be any better than the Yu clan. At this time, the clan's interests are still the most important. Nan Hongtai's expression was very calm. From the beginning to the end, he did not want to have anything to do with the Yu clan. What happened in the past had become a knot in his heart. Now that the Yu clan had fallen to such a state, he almost clapped his hands and cheered. Lan Hongtai had long been unwilling to say anything to his son, Lan Jingquang. Now that Lan Jingquang was in trouble, he was also unwilling to say anything. The elders on both sides were arguing, each with their own opinions. However, without exception, everyone felt that the Yu clan's appearance was a big trouble. Lan Jingquang was also suffering. Who would have thought that the support he had painstakingly gained over the years would collapse overnight? Now, his enemies in the clan were laughing at him. Finally, after a discussion among the elders, Lan Hongtai made a decision. That was to settle the Yu clan in a place a certain distance away from the Lan clan. In this way, no one would say that the Lan clan was ungrateful. At the same time, they would be able to keep a certain distance from the Yu clan and not threaten the Lan clan. However, at the same time, Lan Hongtai also expressed that they would not continue to live with the Yu clan like this. The Yu clan had to find a place to settle down as soon as possible. The Yu clan's side, Lan clan and the Yu clan's people. So their help was only for a short period of time. Lan Jingquang felt helpless about Lan Hongtai's decision, but there was nothing he could do. Most of the Yu clan, SSS clan's families is his clan. Lan Lan's is his clan's clan. S is clan's clan, with the clans use leave. If it was said that the Yu clan came because of their previous power and influence, then the Lan clan would have no choice but to treat them with caution. However, the Yu clan today was no longer the same as before. They were no longer a threat to the Lan clan. Chapter 26:34. Inside the room. Family head, will there be any problems if we just let the Yu clan stay here? Lan Borong furrowed his brows. He felt that something was wrong with the Yu clan's sudden request for their help. The Yu clan has met with such a disaster. It won't be long before the news spreads throughout the entire Shengxian continent. At that time, those who have a grudge against the Yu clan will have other thoughts. However, We can only help them temporarily. We can't keep them here forever. You mean to say that we're only doing this to stop people from talking? Lan Borong immediately understood the meaning behind Lan Hongtai's words. In fact, as Lan Hongtai's confidant, he was very clear about Lan Hongtai's thoughts. Lan Hongtai nodded. Our Lan clan has always been in close contact with the Yu clan. If we refuse them at this time, it will be very detrimental to our Lan clan's reputation. However, as long as the influence of the Yu clan's matter passes, no one will care about what happens afterwards. As the family head of the Lan clan, Lan Hongtai understood this matter very well. It was enough as long as they didn't have any evidence against them. As for what happened afterwards, they could find any reason and leave on bad terms. Lan Borong immediately understood the family head's thoughts and sighed in his heart. It seemed that after Lan Yunxiao left the Lan clan, the family head's heart had already died. He could see the sinister glint in Lan Hongtai's eyes when he mentioned the Yu clan. Lan Hongtai had never let go of this grudge. He was afraid that when everyone recovered from the shock of the Yu clan's matter, the first person to make a move against the Yu clan would not be his enemy, but Lan Hongtai. How's your investigation going? The coldness in Lan Hongtai's eyes dissipated and was replaced by deep concern. Currently, he was most curious about Bailey Hongzhuang. As for the Yu clan's matter, he didn't care about it at all. I've sent people to gather information, but everyone seems to be keeping the identity of this Bailey Hongzhuang a secret, so the information I've gathered is not complete. Lan Borong's tone was filled with helplessness. Originally, he thought that it would be easy to find out about Bailey Hongzhuang's background. However, the entire Limitless Palace didn't seem to know anything about Bailey Hongzhuang. Therefore, he didn't know where to start. There's no news from Shitian Pavilion either? Lan Hongtai's brows wrinkled. Recently, this was the only thing he cared about. Lan Borong nodded. The young master of Shitian Pavilion has a very good relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang, so Shitian Pavilion directly rejected this mission. As soon as he said this, Lan Hongtai's eyes couldn't help but reveal a hint of surprise. She has a good relationship with the young master of the Heaven Slaughter Tower? As far as he knew, Shitian Pavilion had always been neutral and didn't have a close relationship with any forces. He didn't expect that this young Bailey Hongzhuang could actually have connection with the young master of Shitian Pavilion. This is the special characteristic of Bailey Hongzhuang. According to the information I've gathered, this Bailey Hongzhuang seems to have appeared out of thin air, but she has a very good relationship with many forces. Chapter 2635. Which forces are on good terms with Bailey Hongzhuang? Tiangang Sect, Shitian Pavilion, Cloud Sword Sect, and Sun Moon Palace. Lan Borong answered truthfully. When the Lan family disciples returned, they didn't know much about these matters. It was only after they carefully understood what had happened in the Battle of Zhuolu that they learned about it. Sun Moon Palace? Hearing this name, Lan Hongtai's expression changed abruptly, and his dark and deep eyes suddenly emitted an incredulous light. Lan Borong nodded. Sun Moon Palace has been in seclusion all these years and has never participated in these activities. But this year, they unexpectedly participated. Speaking of this, Lan Borong couldn't help but look at Lan Hongtai with suspicion. Family head, do you think there's a connection between them? Lan Hongtai's expression was very complicated. He didn't immediately answer Lan Borong's question and instead asked seriously, "Are you sure that Bailey Hongzhuang looks very similar to Yun Xiao and Lingbing?" Very similar. Lan Borong was very sure. When he saw Bailey Hongzhuang for the first time, he couldn't help but be shocked, because they were really too similar. So similar that it was inconceivable. He simply couldn't believe that people who weren't related by blood could be so similar. This was also the reason why he was so sure that Bailey Hongzhuang was Lan Yishuan without any evidence. The light in Lan Hongtai's eyes grew brighter and brighter. His calm and indifferent face couldn't help but show excitement. His face flushed red, as if he was extremely pleasantly surprised. He was very clear about the connection between Sun Moon Palace and Mu Lingbing. However, after that incident, Sun Moon Palace had once come to the Yu family to question them. Then, Sun Moon Palace gradually disappeared from everyone's sight. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang and Sun Moon Palace had reappeared, perhaps there was a connection between the two. Perhaps Sun Moon Palace had done something that he didn't have time to do back then. If that was the case, it would be the best news. Although Lan Hongtai didn't know why Bailey Hongzhuang had become the young palace master of Wuji Palace, he only cared about whether Lan Yunxiao and the others were still alive. As long as he was still alive, it was enough to make him happy. Although Lan Hongtai didn't speak, Lan Borong could see some clues from Lan Hongtai's expression. His whole body relaxed a bit. If they were still alive, that would be great. Bailey Hongzhuang will be here soon, Lan Hongtai said slowly. Lan Borong nodded. In a few days, when the divine pond of ice and snow opens, Bailey Hongzhuang will come. Patriarch can go and take a look then. All right. Lan Hongtai's lips curled into a smile. No matter what, when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang with his own eyes, he would have a better understanding. Since we can't find anything, let them come back. Stop investigating. Lan Borong frowned. If that was the case, they wouldn't be able to get any information. All these years, it's precisely because they've protected their information so well that we haven't heard anything about them. Now that even the heaven-devouring pavilion was on their side, it would be impossible to get any information. Since that was the case, it was better not to investigate. Chapter 2636. Lan Hongtai was very clear that Shitian Pavilion was the #1 information source in Shengxian continent. If they wanted to spread false information, it would be impossible to guard against them. Rather than that, it was better to give up the investigation. He believed that when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang, many things would be clear. He knew Lan Borong's character very well. If he wasn't very confident, Lan Borong wouldn't have made such a conclusion. Whether it was Lan Yunxiao or Mu Lingbing, they weren't ordinary people. This Bailey Hongzhuang was most likely related. Lan Hongtai faintly felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was his granddaughter, Lan Yixuan. Now that he thought about it again, the conflict between Lan Qingyin and Bailey Hongzhuang was so big, perhaps it was related to this matter. Hearing Lan Hongtai's words, Lan Borong immediately understood. I will have him come back. Family head, Qingyin's poison still shows no signs of being cured. If this continues, the situation won't be optimistic. Lan Borong's eyes revealed helplessness. He originally thought that Yu Siqing would be able to cure Lan Qingyin, but after such a long time, Lan Qingyin still showed no signs of improvement. He took a quick glance at Lan Qingyin and saw that she was already weak beyond recognition. If this continued, Lan Qingyin wouldn't be able to hold on much longer. Looking at the situation, the person who poisoned Qingyin doesn't seem to want to take her life. They're just torturing her. Lan Hongtai's eyes flashed with wisdom. If they wanted to poison someone to death, Lan Qingyin would have died long ago. Why would they wait for so long? That's right. Qingyin is in pain every day. Long ago, Lan Borong already understood the characteristics of this poison from Lan Jingquang's mouth. Speaking of which, the other party was really ruthless. It was obvious that they hated Lan Qingyin. When Bailey Hongzhuang comes, this matter should be resolved. Lan Hongtai slowly said. Now that things had reached this point, they had no other way. After all, if even Yu Siqing couldn't cure the poison, they couldn't find a better doctor. Yu Siqing seems to be wholeheartedly trying to cure the poison in her clan. She doesn't care much about Lan Qingyin's situation. That woman has always put her own interests first. Now that the Yu clan is within our Lan clan's territory and is seeking our protection, let her put all her attention on Qingyin. Lan Hongtai's voice was cold. Yu Siqing was the person he hated the most in the Yu clan. This woman had the heart of a snake and scorpion. If it wasn't for Lan Qingyin's sake, he wouldn't be able to transfer the rainbow pearl from Lan Yixuan's body. Then, none of these things would have happened. Once this matter was settled, he would kill Yu Siqing with his own hands. This vicious and powerful woman should have gone to hell long ago. I understand, Lan Borong replied. The Yu clan Lan Qingyin was to come to seek to obtain, to help to seek, was to seek to ask for help. They had originally come to seek help from the Lan family. Although they were now within the Lan family's sphere of influence, there was still a certain distance between them. Clearly, The Lan family was unwilling to bear the risk of a poison master appearing. Chapter 26:37. Jinquang, no matter what, I am still your father-in-law. You don't even allow me to stay in the Lan family. Isn't that too much? Yu Taoyin's face was filled with displeasure. Even though the Yu family had encountered some difficulties, the Lan family's actions were like burning the bridge after crossing the river. Father-in-law, I want to help, but I am powerless in this matter. Lan Jinquang sighed. He naturally knew that this matter would definitely incur Yu Taoyin's displeasure. Hence, he could only use this bitter act. Fortunately, he now had sufficient reason to do so. Qingyin's poison has not been cured yet. Many people in the family feel that Qingyin will not be able to survive this time. Once Qingyin is gone, with the master's personality, I will not be able to inherit the position of the master. My status will naturally plummet. Father-in-law, you should be aware of my current situation. Yu Taotian was originally filled with anger. However, after hearing Lan Jinquang's words, he could not help but sigh. Just like what Lan Jinquang said, he had already expected this situation. He had always been very satisfied with his son-in-law of his all these years. If something really happened to Lan Qingyin, not only would Lan Jinquang's days be difficult, the help that the Yu family received from the Lan family would also be greatly reduced. If Lan Qingyin was still fine, the Lan family would not allow them to stay in such a place. Thinking of this, Yu Taotian could not help but say to Yu Siqing, you should think of a way to cure Qingyin's poison. This is the most important thing now. Yu Siqing had always wanted to cure the poison in the disciples so that they would not be powerless when the other party poisoned them again. However, she felt that the other party would not come again for the time being. The most important thing now was to solve Lan Qingyin's problem. Hearing this, Yu Siqing's expression was somewhat complicated. However, she still nodded. I understand. After hearing Yu Siqing's reply, Lan Jinquang also heaved a sigh of relief. He only had one daughter, Lan Qingyin. If something happened to Lan Qingyin, all his years of hard work would be in vain. This was something that he could not tolerate. Yu Manlan was taking care of Lan Qingyin. Now, Lan Qingyin was so weak that she could not speak. The pain every day made her feel weak. Sometimes she wished she could just die like this, but most of the time, she was afraid of death. When Yu Siqing arrived, Yu Manlan quickly stood up. She didn't know why Yu Siqing suddenly came here. During the journey, other than coming to help Lan Qingyin when she couldn't take it anymore, Yu Siqing didn't care about her at all. I will think a way to deal with Qingyin. You can go back first. Yu Siqing was in a terrible mood, but she had no choice but to lower her head when she was within the Lan family's sphere of influence. Right now, the Yu clan's strength was really too weak. Once someone wanted to make a move on their Yu clan, it would really be impossible to guard against it. However, she had already researched Lan Qingyin's poison for a long time. If she could detoxify it, she would have done so long ago. But now, she had a feeling that the more she researched, the more frustrated she felt. She couldn't find any way to solve it. Now, it wasn't just the Yu clan that had suffered a huge blow. Lan Jinquang and the others' positions in the Lan clan had also fallen greatly. This could be seen from the situation in the conference hall. Chapter 26:38. Ever since she had sensed that strange aura outside her house and the explosion in her house, she had a bad premonition. At that time, she already felt that this was a conspiracy and that things weren't that simple. However, she had investigated and found no clues, so she gradually relaxed. Lan Jinquang had also investigated and found that Lan Hongtai and the others didn't make any movements. It couldn't be the Lan clan. As for the Sun Moon Palace, they could also ignore them. Mu Jin's was getting closer and closer to death. Moreover, with her ugly appearance, she couldn't appear in front of anyone. However, after the incident this time, Yu Siqing increasingly felt that this was a huge conspiracy. The other party's goal was to destroy the entire Yu clan. Although in their opinion, the Yu clan had already fallen to such a miserable state, they probably hadn't achieved the result that the other party wanted. This was what Yu Siqing was most worried about. If the other party wanted to destroy the Yu clan, no one would be able to neutralize that terrifying poison. Their seemingly powerful defense wouldn't be of any use. This feeling was really enough to make them collapse. Therefore, even if the Lan clan was treating them coldly, they could only choose to swallow their anger. Once they left, their situation would be even more difficult. Such a terrifying opponent was enough to make them unable to sleep at night. Hearing Yu Siqing's words, Yu Manlin's eyes were filled with joy. "Aunt, then I'll have to trouble you." Yu Manlong was pleasantly surprised. These days, she had asked Yu Siqing for help many times, but Yu Siqing had always been unwilling to pay attention to her. She didn't know why her attitude had suddenly taken a 180-degree turn today. Just like that, the Yu clan settled down not far from the Lan clan. However, the Yu clan requested that the Yu clan send more people to increase their security. Lan Hongtai didn't refuse this request. Since everyone would be paying attention to this matter when the time came, it was better to put on a show now. As the news of the Yu clan's relocation spread, all the forces in the Shangxian continent were shocked. 1 spread to 10, 10 spread to 100. Everyone was shocked that the Yu clan, which had existed for many years, had been completely destroyed in just 2 days. The Yu clan master, Yu Taotian, had no choice but to bring the remaining Yu clan members to seek help from the Lan clan. This news was too shocking. However, when everyone found out that the reason for the Yu clan's downfall was because of their opponent's poisoning, everyone's expression became even more interesting. If the other party had used force to hurt the Yu clan to this extent, everyone would still be able to understand. After all, the Yu clan was a medical family. Cultivation had never been their forte. But now, the other party had defeated them in their strongest aspect. Not only did Yu Siqing, who was known as the #1 expert in medicine and poison, not only did she not have a solution, she could only run away like a stray dog. This was too ironic. The Yu clan is usually so arrogant, I never thought that they would actually fail miserably this time. This is really interesting. The other party deliberately defeated them in their strongest aspect. This is also a kind of humiliation. Chapter 26:39. For a moment, many powers rejoiced in their misfortune. They would occasionally seek help from the Yu clan, but every time the Yu clan demanded an exorbitant price, they would feel speechless. Although they were very dissatisfied, they had no other way except for Yu Siqing. Thus, they could only helplessly endure. Now that the Yu clan had fallen to such a state, compared to their usual arrogant faces, it was really delightful. However, some people couldn't help but sympathize with the Yu clan. Offending such a terrifying poison master was really a sleepless night. This time, the other party was able to poison the majority of the Yu clan members without anyone noticing. Next time, the Yu clan members would also die in their sleep. The most frightening thing was that the Yu clan didn't know who their opponent was from the beginning to the end. This kind of feeling was really too frightening. Naturally, Limitless Palace also received this news. Nan Gongwu already knew that the Yu clan situation would be very miserable. However, after hearing the exact news, she couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Lin Feng, your disciples' methods are really comparable to yours. As expected, people who aren't from the same family are bound to enter the same house. Nan Gongwu sighed and shook her head, but her face was full of smiles. At that time, Yu Linfeng had relied on his own strength to kill his way out of the encirclement. The record he had created was also extremely shocking. And now, Yu Linfeng's disciple had also relied on his own strength to directly destroy the entire Yu clan. Even if the Yu clan still had some people left, after Bailey Hongzhuang's follow-up actions, they would all be wiped out. However, this kind of feeling was really domineering and satisfying. Yu Linfeng's gentle jade-like face rippled with a cool breeze-like smile. The Yu clan reaped what they sowed. Toward an enemy, one should kill them in one blow. There was no need for pity or sympathy. Bailey Hongzhuang's actions this time could only be said to be beautiful. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing couldn't help but be shocked when they knew that the Yu clan had turned into stray dogs because of Bailey Hongzhuang's actions. Previously, when Bailey Hongzhuang came back, she only told them that she had poisoned them. However, she did not elaborate on the specifics. They knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills were very good, but they didn't expect it to be so destructive. After the initial shock, the two of them only felt one thing, and that was satisfaction. Lan Yinxiao and Mu Lingbing would never forget the time when they knelt in front of the Yu family while holding Yishuan in swaddling clothes. The Yu family's high and mighty attitude, the feeling of having their dignity trampled on, was deeply buried in their memories. They would never forget it for the rest of their lives. And now, the infant who had been persecuted by the Yu clan had turned into an avenger and came to the Yu clan to take back everything. Yin Xiao, Yishuan has already pulled open the curtain of revenge. We should also work hard. Mu Lingbing's lips curled into a radiant smile. For the past 19 years, they had endured all the humiliation and humiliation. Now it was time for them to take it all back. Their daughter was one step faster than them, and as parents, they couldn't be too slow. Hearing this, Lan Yinxiao nodded. The depths of his eyes flickered as a biting cold light quietly flitted past. Back then, he had cared about his brotherly affection and allowed his wife and daughter to reach this step. 19 years later, he would definitely not make the same mistake. Chapter 2640. When the news of the Yu clan had spread throughout the entire Shengxian continent, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had already embarked on their journey to the Lan clan. Bailey Hongzhuang had never been to the Lan clan, even though it was her former home. As an infant, she did not have any memories of the past. She was once born in this clan. Her parents were once greatly supported here. They had also tasted a bloody lesson here and paid a huge price. Today, she was about to return to this land. My wife, the 3 months are almost up. The poison in Lan Qingyin's body should have stopped acting up soon, right? Di Beichen's long eyebrows slanted. When he was in the Yu clan, he had always heard the news of Lan Qingyin being tortured beyond recognition by this poison. Now that such a long time had passed, it was really hard for him to imagine that Lan Qingyin would become like this. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Then the effect of the poison is about to dissipate. It seems that Yu Siqing's poison skills are really incomparable to yours. After such a long time, she still hasn't figured out a way to neutralize it. Di Beichen's eyes were clear and bright. His deep, dark eyes revealed an unconcealable appreciation and admiration. His wife's methods and other aspects were really amazing. Bailey Hongzhuang's red lips slightly curved, her beautiful eyes as clear as water. I had overestimated Yu Siqing previously. I thought that she would only need to spend some time to neutralize this poison. However, it seems that her level is still not enough. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's bright and beautiful eyes, full of youthfulness and vitality. His heart was slightly moved. This time, when we arrive at the Lan clan, I'm afraid that Lan Qingyin's people will make things difficult for you. Di Beichen frowned. With Lan Qingyin's vengeful personality, she will definitely not let us enter the ice-snow pool so easily. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Grandfather and grandmother are already waiting for us at the Lan clan. If the Lan clan dares to make a move against us, grandfather and grandmother will appear. I believe that the Lan family will not dare to do anything to us due to the circumstances. Oh, Di Beichen was surprised. Why didn't I know about this? Bailey Hongzhuang stuck out her tongue, her charming face filled with slyness. My mother told me before we left. Lan Yinxiao and Mu Lingbing were working hard to raise their strength, so they couldn't come with them. However, because they were worried about their safety, they had already discussed this matter with Situ Yin and Mu Jintz. They would protect Bailey Hongzhuang and Mu Jintz well. Once the two sect masters arrived, even if the Lan family wanted to make things difficult for them, they would have to think twice. Right now, the Yu clan was no longer a force to be reckoned with. If the Lan clan wanted to resist the Tiangang sect and the Sun Moon Palace, it would obviously be difficult. Therefore, no matter how dissatisfied Lan Qingyin was, she could only endure it. They had to go to the divine pond of ice and snow. No one would let go of such a good opportunity to increase their strength. When they came out of the divine pond of ice and snow, it would be time for them to face the Lan clan. Lan Jingquang, Yuman Lan, Lan Qingyin, this hypocritical and filthy family. Their good days were about to come to an end. Wife, have you thought about what the Lan clan's attitude would be when they find out about your identity? Di Beichen pondered for a moment before asking the question in his heart. Chapter 26:41. As Di Beichen's voice fell, Bailey Hong Zhuang's eyelids drooped slightly. The sun shone on her fan-like eyelashes, casting a shadow, making people unable to see what she was thinking. Di Beichen also felt complicated about this point. Back then, the Lan family had gone overboard by doing such things to Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others. But no matter what, the Lan family was still the family that Bailey Hong Zhuang truly belonged to. Lan Yunxiao's brothers and sisters were all here. They could face the Yu family without any misgivings, but what kind of attitude should they face the Lan family? Di Beichen knew that Bailey Hong Zhuang was also conflicted about this point, which was why Bailey Hong Zhuang had never brought it up. But now that they were about to head to the Lan family, they naturally had to consider the situation clearly. Otherwise, they wouldn't know what to do next. Bailey Hong Zhuang was silent for a moment, then said, "There are only two possibilities. The first is that everyone stands on Lan Jingquang's side and feels alarmed and hostile towards our appearance. The second is that a portion of people care about old friendships and stand on our side." She had thought about this matter before. Although the Lan family was her family, she was unfamiliar with this family. Aside from the news she heard, she knew nothing about the Lan family situation. In reality, she was also very clear that what had happened back then had been a conspiracy by Lan Jingquang and his faction. Not everyone in the Lan family had wallowed in the mire. It was just that the others had chosen to ignore and compromise in the end, leaving them bitterly disappointed. Betrayal. That was a feeling of betrayal. Even though Bailey Hong Zhuang hadn't experienced that scene, she could imagine Lan Yunxiao's feelings just by thinking about it. This feeling was undoubtedly extremely painful. No matter how the others apologized, the damage had already been done. However, it was also impossible for Bailey Hong Zhuang to destroy the entire Lan family. Although the majority had chosen to compromise, there were still clansmen who had fought alongside Lan Yunxiao to the end. They couldn't hurt these people. Di Beichen nodded. It's been so many years. Lan Jingquang's influence in the Lan family has grown. I'm sure many people have become his people. However, Lan Qingyan's incident this time will most likely cause quite a bit of trouble for Lan Jingquang. His influence will also weaken a bit. I believe that even after so many years, the hearts of those who fought alongside father will not waver. Bailey Hong Zhuang's pitch-black eyes flickered with a cold and proud light. She had enough confidence in Lan Yunxiao's abilities. Although the majority of the people had compromised with Lan Yunxiao's position in the Lan family, there were still many people who supported him, just like Yu Linfeng. Even though Lan Yunxiao had disappeared for so many years and everyone thought he was dead, Yu Linfeng still remembered him and the kindness he had shown him back then. Lan Yunxiao and Lan Jingquang were fundamentally different. Lan Jingquang relied on benefits to subdue people, but Lan Yunxiao was enough to convince people wholeheartedly. This was the reason why Lan Jingquang couldn't compare to Lan Yunxiao back then. After that incident, Lan Yunxiao viewed Lan Jingquang as an enemy. Presumably, Lan Yunxiao's faction also viewed Lan Jingquang as an enemy. Chapter 26:42. You're right. There must be a lot of people in this huge Lan clan who support Uncle. Di Beichen's brows were filled with certainty. It was because of this that he felt that they needed to think more before confronting the Lan clan. From what I know, the Lan clan's clan head was furious after the incident. He even wanted to fall out with the Yu clan. However, in the end, he was forced to compromise because of the clan's interests. However, all these years, the Lan clan's clan head has never been kind to Lan Jingquang. He has always been thinking about your father. Although the Lan clan situation was rather secretive, Di Beichen still managed to find out a lot of information. He felt that as long as Lan Jingquang's faction was expelled, the Lan clan would be different from before. Beichen, I feel that this matter should be decided by my father. My target is only Lan Qingyan. Bailey Hong Zhuang's deep eyes blossomed with a dazzling brilliance. Her voice was cold and resolute. The conflict between the elders should be resolved by the elders. That year, Lan Jingquang and Yu Manlan were not her parents' opponents. Therefore, they could only use such underhanded methods to obtain victory. Now, Her parents were on the road to revenge. All these grudges should be resolved by their own hands. As for her, as a junior, the thing she wanted to take back was on Lan Qingyin's body. This woman stole her rainbow pearl and lived arrogantly for so many years. Today, she wanted to take back everything from Lan Qingyin's hands with her own hands. She could imagine Lan Qingyin's arrogant appearance in front of her parents all these years. Not only did she not feel the slightest bit of guilt for taking away her sister's things, on the contrary, she felt that all of this was how it should be. For this kind of inhumane sister, Bailey Hongzhuang could only use her strength to teach her what was called human nature. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. His gaze gradually became gentle. You're right. Along the way, Bailey Hongzhuang had done enough. Now that Lan Yinxiao, Mu Lingbing, and Mu Jins had all recovered, they could personally resolve the grudges between the elders. As for Bailey Hongzhuang, she could finally put down some of the burden on her shoulders. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other and smiled. The morning sun shone on the two of them, plating them with a layer of illusory brilliance. The two of them held each other's hands tightly. Time passed peacefully. When the Bailey Hongzhuang duo arrived at Blue Sun City, they saw Mo Yunjue as expected. Mo Yunjue, as the young lord of the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion, always had the feeling that he was in control, as if everything was within his expectations. As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen entered Blue Sun City, Mo Yunjue's people came to pick them up. Because there were still a few days before the Divine Ice Pond opened, they temporarily stayed in Blue Sun City and did not directly go to the Lan family. Although that was the case, no matter if it was Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, or Mo Yunjue, their temperaments were not ordinary people. Thus, when they entered Blue Sun City, they attracted the attention of many people. Regarding this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two were very free and easy. This time, they came to Blue Sun City openly. Unlike when they went to Yutian City, they did not need to hide anything. Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, you're here. Chapter 2643. Yunjue, you're early. Bailey Hongzhuang's face bloomed with an elegant smile. In order to avoid missing the date, they had specially come a few days earlier. Who would have thought that Mo Yunjue would be even earlier than them? I'm only early by 2 days. Mo Yunjue chuckled, then gave a thumbs up. I've already heard. The commotion you've caused this time is really big. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. Naturally, they knew what Mo Yunjue was talking about. I'm only here to accompany the guest. This is all Hongzhuang's doing. Di Beichen raised his handsome eyebrows. As her husband, he had achieved very little in this matter. Everything had been planned by Bailey Hongzhuang. Mo Yunjue's sharp and cold face curved into a smile. Di Beichen, if you continue like this, I'm afraid you'll fall behind Hongzhuang. They had all seen Bailey Hongzhuang's improvement over the years. In fact, even at their level, they couldn't help but gasp in admiration after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's improvement. If Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't been unable to cultivate because her dantian had been destroyed, Bailey Hongzhuang would probably be the #1 person among the younger generation in the Shengxian continent. Hearing Mo Yunjue's teasing, Di Beichen shrugged indifferently, looking as if he didn't care. In the future, I'll rely on my wife to protect me. But Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. It was really rare to see this side of Di Beichen. Mo Yunjue didn't seem to expect Di Beichen to have such a reaction. At first, he was stunned, then he smiled helplessly. Who asked him to not have a wife? Right now, the Yu clan is in Blue Sun City and is very close to the Lan clan. In order to cure Lan Qingyin's poison, Yu Siqing had always stayed in the Lan clan. Once your real identity is exposed, I'm afraid that the Yu clan will not let you off easily. Are you guys ready? Mo Yunjue's expression was unfathomable. During this period of time, he had already understood the situation clearly. If only Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen came here alone, it would be very risky. Even if it's a dragon's lair or a tiger's den, we still have to go. Moreover, this Yu clan was slaughtered by Hongzhuang like stray dogs. Di Beichen's expression was relaxed. without the slightest bit of nervousness in the face of a great enemy. On the contrary, it was filled with a poetic feeling as if he was on a scenic tour. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly without saying anything. At that time, it was too difficult for her to fight against the entire Lan clan and Yu clan by herself. But now, she was no longer the isolated and helpless young girl who could only rely on herself. Her background was enough to contend against them. It seems that you are full of confidence. Mo Yunju nodded and muttered to himself. Although he did not know what Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were planning, it was fine as long as they came prepared. After preparing for so long, we have finally come to the Lan clan. Naturally, we are mentally prepared. Yunjua, thank you for always helping me. Bailey Hongzhuang's bright eyes were filled with heartfelt gratitude. Even during this period of time, Mo Yunjue was still helping her to face the Yu clan's investigation. I'm not helping for free. I want to be rewarded. Mo Yunjue's brows revealed a trace of freedom. His ink-black eyes faintly revealed some reluctance and complexity. Now that things had come to this, he had to admit that he had lost to Di Beichen in terms of feelings. Chapter 2644. Reward. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly, a bit puzzled. Didn't you say you were going to teach me the art of disguise? Mo Yunjue laughed. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood. Don't worry, we were in too much of a hurry when we met before. Since we have time now, I'll teach you the art of disguise. She only mastered this disguise technique occasionally. However, for an organization like Shirtian Pavilion, a good disguise technique was too important for them. Next, Bailey Hongzhuang taught Mo Yunjue the art of disguise. Mo Yunjue originally knew the art of disguise from Shangxian continent, but after experiencing Bailey Hongzhuang's art of disguise, he couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. It was much better than theirs. As long as one wasn't an expert in disguise, they wouldn't be able to see through this disguise. With Mo Yunjue's talent, he learned very quickly. With Bailey Hongzhuang's teaching, he naturally got the hang of it. During this process, Di Beichen, the wife-protecting demon, naturally stayed at the side and learned a thing or two. With his wife's playful personality, she would often make him look so ugly that even she couldn't bear to look at him. During this process, Mo Yunjue also told Bailey Hongzhuang all the news that he recently learned. Because the poison in Lan Qingyin's body hasn't been cured for a long time, Lan Jingquang's power in the Lan clan has declined. However, Lan Qingyin is still alive, and Lan Jingquang has the support of the elders, so he can still hold on for the time being. Once Lan Qingyin dies, it would be useless for Lan Jingquang to hold on. Therefore, they have placed all their hopes on Yu Siqing. Only if Yu Siqing succeeds in curing the poison will their situation improve. This is not only what Lan Jingquang is looking forward to, but also what the Yu clan is looking forward to. Mo Yunjue shifted his gaze, only to see Bailey Hongzhuang's mouth was like a pill, her skin as delicate as porcelain, revealing a kind of shocking beauty. He could not help but admire her. It was no wonder that Bailey Hongzhuang was able to cure his poison. Even Yu Siqing, who was known as the #1 doctor in the Shangxian continent, was no match for Bailey Hongzhuang. She was truly amazing. Now that you have arrived in Blue Sun City, I'm afraid the Lan family has already heard of your arrival. I'm afraid they will come looking for you very soon. Mo Yunjue looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen mockingly. Once they entered the Lan family's sphere of influence, trouble came one after another. Lan Qingyin was the most outstanding disciple of the Lan clan in this generation. The divine pond of ice snow was about to open. If Lan Qingyin missed this opportunity, she would have to wait for another one. This was definitely not something the Lan family wanted to see. Once she waited for another 3 years, it would be very difficult for Lan Qingyin to catch up to her original progress. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Her ink-black phoenix eyes revealed understanding and wisdom. They probably won't come looking for me because the poison should be cured today. Yu Siqing can cure the poison today? Mo Yunjue was a little puzzled. If Bailey Hongzhuang could even predict when Yu Siqing would be cured, this was a little scary. No, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. The poison I gave Lan Qingyan has a time limit. Now that the time is up, her poison will naturally be cured. As soon as this was said, Mo Yunjue also understood. Chapter 2645. Lan Jingquang was in a terrible fix recently. No matter how hard Yu Siqing tried to detoxify Lan Qingyan's condition did not improve. As Yu Siqing spent more time, the suspicions of the Lan clan towards Yu Siqing deepened. No matter what, Yu Siqing was known as the #1 in the art of medicine and poison. Who would have thought that she would not be able to detoxify Lan Qingyan after spending 3 months? The Yu clan was already in decline. After this situation, the people of Blue Sun City looked down on the Yu clan even more. 3 months were almost up. The divine pond of ice and snow was about to open. However, Lan Qingyan's condition did not improve. They would have to give up this golden opportunity. Thinking of this, Lan Jingquang felt an inexplicable sense of irritation. He had carefully planned for so many years. He did not expect that it would be ruined because of a battle for supremacy. Once Lan Qingyan missed this opportunity, it would be difficult for the other disciples of the Lan clan to catch up even if Lan Qingyan survived the divine pond of ice and snow. In other words, their original power could be said to be gone forever. One careless move, and the whole game was lost. After knowing that Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun had come to Blue Sun City, Lan Jingquang's eyes lit up. He quickly sent people to find Bailey Hongzhuang. Yu Siqing spent so much time and still could not detoxify it. Obviously, there was no way to successfully detoxify it. Since this poison was administered by Bailey Hongzhuang must have a way to detoxify it. Previously, Bailey Hongzhuang was in Limitless Palace. Even if they wanted to ask for it, they would not be able to get a good result. However, now that Bailey Hongzhuang was in their Lan clan sphere of influence, this situation would be much easier to solve. If Bailey Hongzhuang was not willing to give up the antidote, then their Lan clan could only use violence. No matter what, he could not let his years of planning go to waste. Immediately go to the clan and invite Bailey Hongzhuang to the clan. Lan Jingquang's eyes flashed with malice. He was filled with disgust and hatred towards this Bailey Hongzhuang whom he had never met before. If it weren't for Bailey Hongzhuang, he wouldn't have been in such a terrible state for the past 3 months. Other than when Lan Yunxiao was with him, he hadn't felt this feeling for many years. Yes, when the Lan family's second elder and the others found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had arrived in Blue Sun City, smiles appeared on their faces. No matter what, at least Lan Qingyan had persevered until now. As long as the antidote arrived, Lan Qingyan would be able to recover quickly. After all, the Lan family also had a lot of natural treasures. As long as Lan Qingyan could participate in the divine pond of ice and snow this time, then all of these effects would not matter. Even though the Lan family had many outstanding disciples, as long as Lan Qingyan did not die, she would still be the most outstanding person. No one could compare to her. However, just as Lan Jingquang was sending people to invite Bailey Hongzhuang, news suddenly came from Yu Siqing's residence. Master Quang, Great Master Yu Siqing, just sent news. She has successfully detoxified the poison in Lan Qingyan's body. Now, Lan Qingyan's injuries have already begun to recover. Hearing this news, Lan Jingquang was slightly stunned. Then, a trace of ecstasy appeared in his eyes. Is this true? Chapter 2646. Previously, when they knew that Lan Qingyan had lost an arm, the Lan family had already prepared the medicinal herbs for her. However, later on, the situation was not suitable for treatment, and this matter had been delayed. However, the medicinal herbs had always been placed in Yu Siqing's residence. Once Yu Siqing successfully detoxified the poison, she would immediately treat Lan Qingyan. Lan Jingquang instantly heaved a sigh of relief. Originally, he was worried that using forceful means on Bailey Hongzhuang might cause some trouble. However, compared to the greater loss, this was already the best method. He did not expect that Yu Siqing would be able to detoxify Lan Qingyan at this crucial moment. This really solved a huge problem for him. It seemed that the heavens did not want him to die. Although the process of these 3 months was very torturous, as long as Lan Qingyan could recover, then all the problems could be easily solved. Thinking of the vexation he had suffered in these 3 months, Lan Jingquang's gaze became increasingly gloomy and cold. After Lan Qingyan had truly recovered, he would let those disloyal people taste the consequences of betrayal. Come, let's go and take a look. Lan Jingquang immediately stood up and walked towards Yu Siqing's residence. The second elder and the others were also overjoyed. Their original nervousness and worry had already disappeared, and it was replaced by a kind of pleasure of taking revenge. After nearly 3 months of torture, Lan Qingyan's entire body was on the verge of death. She felt that she was not far from death. However, when she woke up from her coma today, she suddenly felt that the pain that accompanied her for nearly 3 months had suddenly disappeared. This feeling was too nostalgic, and she even suspected that she was hallucinating. However, after she told Yu Siqing about her feelings, Yu Siqing took her pulse and told her that the poison in her body had been completely removed. Hearing Yu Siqing's words, Lan Qingyan only felt that it was inconceivable. She was almost certain that she was going to die. She did not expect that there would be a sudden turn of events. However, the feeling in her body was indeed there. She asked Yu Siqing many times, and Yu Siqing gave her such a definite answer. She suddenly felt as if she had risen from hell to heaven. In reality, it was not only Lan Qingyan who had this feeling. Yu Siqing also had the same feeling. During this period of time, as she was at her wit's end, she could feel that the Lan family's attitude towards her was getting colder and colder. It was obvious that they no longer took her seriously. She, who had always been looked up to by others, could not stand being looked down upon by others. However, the poison was too strong, and she could not break it no matter how hard she tried. However, what she didn't expect was that Lan Qingyan's poison would suddenly disappear today. It had completely disappeared. After discovering this, Yu Siqing immediately realized that this was an opportunity. Under such torment, Lan Qingyan was already muddle-headed. She had no idea what was going on. She would take all the credit for this, and no one would know. Once she spread the news of the antidote, she would become a hero of the Lan family. As a result, the Lan clan no longer dared to look down on him. On the contrary, she would become an honored guest of the Lan family and Lan Qingyan's savior. Lan Qingyan was the young mistress of the Lan family. With such an identity, she did not need to worry about the following situation. Chapter 26:47. When Lan Jingquang arrived, he saw that Lan Qingyan's pale face had recovered a bit, and her spirit was much better. Seeing this, Lan Jingquang's eyes couldn't help but be filled with joy. "Qingyan, how do you feel?" Lan Qingyan's mood was naturally very good. This feeling of living from the brink of death was difficult to move. Her face revealed a joyful smile. "Father, I'm very good. Thanks to Grand Aunt for saving me." Although she didn't know much about medicine, the pain in her body had indeed disappeared. After recovering from the pain that was enough to torture a person to death, Lan Qingyan only felt that every minute and every second was exceptionally comfortable. Lan Jingquang's face was full of smiles. He then turned to look at Yu Siqing. "Aunt, it's been hard on you. Thank you for saving Qingyan's life." These days, because Yu Siqing hadn't made any progress in curing Lan Qingyan's poison, Lan Jingquang couldn't help but have some opinions in his heart. Originally, Lan Jingquang had always been very respectful towards Yu Siqing. However, after the incident in the Yu clan, Lan Jingquang's thoughts had changed. After all, Yu Siqing had always been known as the #1 in medicine and poison for so many years. He didn't expect that when the Yu clan was in trouble, Yu Siqing would be helpless. It was as if she was useless in an instant. Lan Qingyan had been poisoned for so long. Yu Siqing had always been thinking of ways to cure the poison, but there was no progress. This made him wonder if Yu Siqing's previous reputation was just flattery. Otherwise, the other party just casually poisoned her, and it was already difficult for Yu Siqing to be in such a difficult situation. When he thought of all the requests that Yu Siqing made of him, the dissatisfaction in his heart became even stronger. Fortunately, after so long, he finally succeeded in curing the poison. Looking at Lan Jingquang's face full of smiles, Yu Siqing couldn't help but feel a trace of disdain and disgust. These days, she saw the change in Lan Jingquang's attitude towards her. If she didn't say that she cured Lan Qingyin's poison, she was afraid that in the following days, she really wouldn't have any status in the Lan clan. Fortunately, there was always a way out. Although she didn't know why Lan Qingyin's poison dissipated, as long as it dissipated, it was enough. You're too polite. Curing Qingyin's poison is my duty, Yu Siqing said with a smile. Her sincere appearance did not reveal the disgust in her heart. Aunt, I'll have to trouble you to help Qingyin recover as soon as possible. The Ice Snow Divine Altar is about to open. Yu Siqing nodded and said, Don't worry, leave this matter to me. With so many heavenly treasures, it's very easy to let Qingyin recover as soon as possible. After receiving Yu Siqing's confirmation, Lan Jingquang let out a sigh of relief. He felt like he could finally put down the stone that had been weighing on his heart for so many days. Next, he would be able to answer to the elders. As for those who had become disloyal during these days, he could start dealing with them. Lan Qingyin's face was full of smiles, but the ruthlessness in her eyes became more intense. The reason why he had suffered so much was all because of that bitch, Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 2648. After the Battle of Zhuolu, she already hated Bailey Hongzhuang to the extreme. She didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would almost take her life. This time, Bailey Hongzhuang was here. She must make sure that Bailey Hongzhuang would never return. The news of Lan Qingyin's detoxification quickly spread throughout the Lan family. This news was no different from a heavy bomb, shocking everyone in the Lan family. In fact, the poison in Lan Qingyin's body had not been detoxified for so long. Almost everyone was certain that Lan Qingyin would die without a doubt. Many of the younger disciples of the Lan family even wondered if the opportunity to enter the Divine Ice Pond would fall on them. Unexpectedly, just a few days before the Divine Ice Pond opened, Lan Qingyin was detoxified. For a moment, Lan Jingquang's people were extremely happy, while the other group was deeply worried. Once Lan Qingyin's injuries were healed, the situation would return to how it was before. Winner takes all. They could almost imagine the outcome. The Lan family's patriarch, Lan Hongtai, also knew of this news. He didn't feel much about it, because his heart was now on Bailey Hongzhuang, who had already arrived in Blue Sun City. He wanted to see Bailey Hongzhuang with his own eyes. However, the current situation between the Lan family and Bailey Hongzhuang was very sensitive. One must know that the reason why Lan Qinyin was in such a situation was all because of Bailey Hongzhuang. He didn't intend to alert the enemy. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang entered the Lan family, then he would definitely have the opportunity to see her. Mo Yunjue was indeed a genius. When learning the art of disguise, he could be said to be able to grasp it with just a little bit. After Bailey Hongzhuang taught Mo Yunjue some of the key techniques, Mo Yunjue was able to master it very quickly. At this moment, a series of knocks sounded outside the house. Following that, a man in a black robe walked into the house. He looked as if he had something to report to Mo Yunjue. Mo Yunjue nodded slightly and gave a look, indicating that he didn't need to care about Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Only then did the man slowly speak. Young master, the Lan family just released news that Yu Siqing has successfully detoxified Lan Qinyin. When this news came out, Mo Yunjue couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. The situation was really as Bailey Hongzhuang said. Lan Qingyin's S poisons was detoxified today. But this should be the detoxification was done by Yu Siqing. Got it. You can leave now. Report back if you have any news. Mo Yunjue waved his hand, and the man in black walked out of the house. Di Beichen's lips curled into a slight smile, and his expression was somewhat mocking. Looks like this Yu Siqing is also at her wit's end. In order to improve her situation, she actually took all the credit for herself. I'm afraid that Lan Jingquang and the rest are now endlessly grateful to Yu Siqing. If they know that all this wasn't Yu Siqing's doing, their expressions. I'm really looking forward to it. Mo Yunjue chuckled. Yu Siqing thought that no one else would know about this, but as the instigators, they couldn't be clearer about this matter. Yu Siqing hasn't been able to detoxify my poison for so long. I'm afraid that her situation in the Lan family isn't very good. For her to do this now, although it's somewhat shameless, it's understandable. Chapter 2649. Yu Siqing would never have imagined that she would fall into such a situation one day. However, this was nothing now. Once Yu Siqing finds out who she really was, she would feel even worse. There's no hurry. The truth will not be buried just like that. Let Yu Siqing be smug for now. The corners of Di Beichen's lips curled upwards, and there was a hint of ridicule in his smile. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other. The situation would only get more and more interesting. At night, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were cultivating in their room when two figures suddenly appeared soundlessly in front of them. Bailey Hongzhuang and Mu Qinghan immediately withdrew from their cultivation and looked at the two exceptionally familiar figures in front of them. Joyful smiles appeared on their faces. Grandfather, grandmother. Bailey Hongzhuang rose to her feet. Ever since she had left Sun Moon Palace, she had not seen Si Tian and Mu Jintz. Now that she had seen the two of them again, she could not help but feel excited. She had heard from her parents that the relationship between Si Tian and Mu Jintz had been mended a lot. Although there were still some affectionate feelings, it was only a matter of time. Master, mistress. Di Beichen bowed respectfully, and a joyful smile appeared on his incomparably handsome face. Ever since his master had found his mistress, he had completely become a hands-off shopkeeper and no longer paid any attention to the matters of Tiangang sect. However, now that he had seen his master and mistress together, he was genuinely happy. He had lived with his master since he was a child and understood his master's situation very well. After so many years, he had never seen his master in such high spirits. This feeling was as if he had found his life's goal. In the past, he had never seen his master so happy. Perhaps from the day his master had found his mistress, he had finally begun to live the life he truly wanted. Si Tian and Mu Jintz sized up the talented and beautiful couple Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang before them. Their eyes flickered with relief and kindness. Looks like you've improved a lot during this period of time. With Si Tian's cultivation, he could naturally see the current strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen at a glance. Compared to before they had participated in the Battle of Zhuolu, their strength had increased tremendously. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen smiled. The Battle of Zhuolu was truly a good place, especially the Primal Chaos Tablet. It helped them raise their cultivation by quite a bit. If they hadn't participated in the Battle of Zhuolu, there would still be a large gap between them. I've already heard about the Battle of Zhuolu. To be able to achieve such good results, Yishuan were really overjoyed. Mu Jinsei's face was filled with joy and excitement. When she had found out about Bailey Hongzhuang's achievements, she had felt an indescribable sense of pride. This feeling made her happier than when she had achieved good results. Grandma, I was just lucky. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Speaking of her experience in the Battle of Zhuolu, no one knew whether it was good luck or bad luck. If they hadn't been unlucky enough to walk on the most difficult path, then she wouldn't have been so lucky to obtain such a huge increase in strength. It could only be said that everything was predestined. Chapter 2650. Bailey Hongzhuang was still young, but she was able to reach this step with her own ability. Just this point alone made her stronger than everyone present. At least, Mu Jintz was ashamed of her inferiority. Beichun, you have to work harder. Hongzhuang is getting more and more powerful now. Si Tian patted Di Beichen's shoulder with an extremely kind expression. He had watched Di Beichen grow up since he was a child, so he knew his character very well. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were together, there was still a big gap between them. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had obtained the Rainbow Pearl, her talent had been completely revealed, and the gap between the two was gradually shrinking. If Di Beichen didn't work harder, and Bailey Hongzhuang caught up to him in the future, then the situation would be different. Of course, in Si Tian's opinion, there was nothing wrong with living off a woman. Di Beichen nodded and said with a smile, Master, I will work hard. Looking at Di Beichen's appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. Today was the second time someone had said such words to Di Beichen. It seemed that the increase in her strength was really a bit dangerous for Di Beichen. However, she also knew in her heart that this was because Di Baichen's physique hadn't changed yet. Once Di Baichen's physique changed, then his cultivation speed would greatly increase. After they settled the Lan family's matter, they would put all their focus on changing Di Baichen's physique. Otherwise, if they continued to delay like this, it wouldn't be good for Di Baichen's body. During this period of time, the situation had gradually begun to appear, but Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills were able to successfully suppress it, so there weren't any problems now. Yishuan, I heard that Lan Qingyin's poison has been cured. Once you don't have this weakness, I'm afraid that when you go to the Lan family, they will start to question you. What do you plan to do next? Mu Jinsei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with concern. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang had recognized her, Bailey Hongzhuang's actions had never made them worry. However, this time, Bailey Hongzhuang had poisoned Lan Qingyin so viciously. Once Lan Qingyin recovered, she would definitely not let this matter rest. If they directly fell out with the Lan family, it would be fine. But according to their understanding, Bailey Hongzhuang planned to enter the Divine Ice Lake first. If that was the case, the situation would be a little troublesome. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly, with confidence and indifference between her eyebrows. Now that I'm the Sun Moon Palace's young palace master, I believe that the Lan family won't dare to do anything to me. The Battle of Zhuolu has never prohibited the use of poison. What's more, I only poisoned Lan Qingyin and took her life. If the Lan family were to kill me because of this, it would be too much. Bailey Hongzhuang was the head of an aristocratic family in her previous life, so she was very clear about some of the things that aristocratic families paid attention to. No matter what, this participation in the Divine Ice Lake was a promise that the Lan family had previously made. If the Lan family didn't fulfill this promise, it would be a huge blow to the Lan family's reputation. Originally, the Battle of Zhuolu this time had already weakened the Lan family's reputation. If this unfavorable news were to spread, then the Lan family's influence would be even worse. Chapter 26:51. They were the ones who suggested the divine pond of ice and snow as a reward. They won't slap their own face on this point. Even if they want to settle the score, they'll have to wait until we leave the divine pond of ice and snow. However, once we leave the divine pond of ice and snow, there's no need to continue hiding. Di Baichen quickly said. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen's words, Si Tu Yin and Mu Jinsei looked at each other. It seemed that these two brats had already calculated everything. It's better to be safe than sorry. Si Tu Yan's voice deepened. Lan Jingquang isn't a soft-hearted person. This time, he's in a terrible fix. I'm afraid he won't let you off so easily. Now, whether it was Si Tu Yin or Mu Jinsei, they were both on guard against the Lan and Yu clans. This was because from the things that had happened these past few years, they clearly knew that both the Lan and Yu clans were not good people. Grandfather and grandmother are already here, aren't they? With you here, we don't have to be afraid of anything. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was full of smiles. The Yu clan was no longer the same as before. To let the Lan clan offend Tiangang sect and Sun Moon Palace, they probably didn't have the guts to do so. However, once Mu Jinsei appeared, Yu Siqing would probably be completely dumbfounded. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's cute and playful appearance, Mu Jinsei couldn't help but reach out and pat Bailey Hongzhuang's head. You little brat, you've really calculated everything. That's natural. If I didn't have a foolproof plan, I wouldn't have dared to set foot here. If she hadn't prepared everything, how would she have dared to set foot in this place that meant so much to her? This was the place she had secretly decided to come to when she found out about her past. Back then, she had suffered great humiliation here. Now that she was here again, she definitely wouldn't allow anything unexpected to happen here. What she wanted was to stand in front of the Lan clan in a completely domineering manner. She wanted to let everyone in the Lan clan know how foolish their decision was back then. Even if she lost the Rainbow God Pearl, she still couldn't be compared to trash like Lan Qingyin. Similarly, her father was not someone a despicable person like Lan Jingquang could compare to. As for her mother, she wasn't someone that a vicious and merciless woman like Yu Manlan could compare to. In the end, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others came to an agreement. First, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun would head to the Lan family. Mu Jin's and Si Tian would keep an eye on the Lan family situation. If anything went wrong, they would immediately appear. In this way, this was already a foolproof plan, and there was no need to worry about any other risks. Even if it was only Si Tu Yin and Mu Jin Se who came alone and did not bring anyone from their forces, there was still no need to worry. Grandmother, this time when I went to the Yu clan, I specially prepared a gift for you. Her beautiful eyes, which were as black as ink, flickered with a dazzling light. She believed that her grandfather and grandmother were still unaware of this. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Mu Jin stared blankly for a moment before asking, "What gift?" Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Yu Siqing had used such a vicious poison on you, causing you to suffer for so many years. This time, I've improved the poison and used it on Yu Siqing's body. Chapter 2652. As Yu Siqing's old friends, they understood her cautiousness very well. It was extremely difficult for an ordinary person to even get close to Yu Siqing, not to mention poisoning her without anyone noticing. They had been in Blue Sun City for a while and had a certain understanding of the Lan and Yu family. After knowing that the Yu family had suffered such a huge blow because of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's actions, the two of them couldn't help but gasp in surprise. However, they had never heard of the news of Yu Siqing being poisoned. On the contrary, there had been rumors of Yu Siqing helping Lan Qingyan to cure her poison. If Yu Siqing had really been poisoned, she shouldn't be so relaxed right now and still have the leisure to help others cure their poison. However, they naturally wouldn't doubt Bailey Hongzhuang's words. It seemed that there were still many things that they weren't clear about. Hongzhuang, how did you poison Yu Siqing? Didn't she notice? Si Tu Yin felt that it was a little inconceivable. Yu Siqing was a vicious and merciless woman, so she was extremely guarded against others. All these years, in order to find out about Mu Jin's whereabouts, he had tried to threaten Yu Siqing. However, this woman had always taken all the unfavorable factors into account, leaving him helpless. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was actually able to poison Yu Siqing successfully. From the looks of it, Yu Siqing hadn't noticed until now. This wasn't an ordinary feat. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and sighed. Poisoning Yu Siqing was indeed an extremely difficult task. As her direct disciple, I had stayed by her side for a whole month before I found a chance to poison her. However, this goo poison isn't like ordinary poisons and needs a certain amount of time to take effect. This is the only way to bury the goo poison deeper. Judging from the current situation, it won't be long before the poison flares up. After knowing that Bailey Hongzhuang had become Yu Siqing's direct disciple, Si Tu Yin and Mu Jin's couldn't help but be stunned. Previously, they had only roughly understood that the Yu family had fallen into such a situation. However, they didn't understand the process at all. They didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang had actually become Yu Siqing's direct disciple. This was really out of their expectations. It seemed that when Bailey Hongzhuang had gone to the Yu family, the things that had happened weren't ordinary. If Yu Siqing knew that her direct disciple had poisoned her, who knew what kind of expression she would have? Yixuan, is the goo poison you gave Yu Siqing the same as the goo poison I was inflicted with before? Mu Jin's couldn't help but ask. When she thought about how this parasite had tortured her for so many years, she felt her hair stand on end. The effects of the goo poison were too terrifying. She had been tortured for years to the point that she almost wanted to end her own life. Fortunately, she had persevered. Yixuan, 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 and then Yixuan, Yixuan. The goo worm is still the same one as before, but I added a little something. Chapter 2653. The effect of this goo poison is very similar to the one from back then, but it's much more powerful. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black eyes flashed with a bright luster. Since she wanted to return everything to Yu Siqing, it was naturally impossible for it to be the same as back then. She had to make Yu Siqing suffer more. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Mu Jin's and Si Tu Yin glanced at each other. Their granddaughter was really not an ordinary kind of person. If Yu Siqing knew about this, she would definitely regret everything she had done. I'll wait and see. Mujin smiled. Mujin did not have the slightest bit of sympathy for someone like Mujin who had done many evil deeds. Once Yu Siqing fell in her hands, she would definitely let her have a good taste of what was called pain. However, her granddaughter's methods were obviously more than hers. Giving her a taste of her own medicine was the best. In the next 2 days, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest lived peacefully in Blue Sun City. However, they were still keenly aware that many people from the Lan family were watching their every move. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two generously let the other party see. At least before entering the Divine Ice Snow Pond, they did not have any plans. As for Si Tian and Mu Jin's, they had already completely disappeared from everyone's sight. With their strength, as long as they wanted to hide, the Lan family would not be able to discover them. Ever since Lan Qingyan had been cured of the poison, her original arrogance had returned. During this period, although she had been lying in bed, she still understood what had happened from the mouths of Yuman Lan and the rest. In the past, she did not know that so many people wanted her to fall so that they could obtain her resources. This point caused Lan Qingyan's heart to be filled with intense anger. These bastards! She must quickly recover and not let them have the chance to take advantage of her. After this period of experience, Lan Qingyan felt that she had grown again. In the past, her life had been smooth sailing and she had not experienced any great storms. She thought that everything was so easy. However, after Lan Jingquang taught her a lesson, she realized that things were not as simple as they seemed. The reason why her life had been so smooth all these years was because Lan Jingquang had been helping her with everything. Lan Qingyan felt that she was not ruthless enough in the past. If she was ruthless enough, like her father, once she made a move, she would not have fallen into such a situation. This time, after entering the divine pond of ice and snow, she would first take Bailey Hongzhuang's life. Then, she would make those fellows in the family unable to have any other thoughts. The future head of the Lan family could only be her. When Lan Jingquang saw the change in Lan Qingyan's attitude, his face revealed a joyful smile. Fortunately, this daughter of his, Lan Qingyan, was not as useless as Yuman Lan. In fact, she was more like him. As long as Lan Qingyan pulled herself together, the Lan family would definitely be theirs. Father, that Bailey Hongzhuang is very strange. She is extremely strong when it comes to fighting above her level. It had been 3 months since the Battle of Zhuolu had ended. He wondered if she had improved in the past 3 months. Chapter 2654. Lan Qingyan looked at Lan Jingquang in front of her. Her beautiful eyes were filled with worry and viciousness. She wanted to personally deal with Bailey Hongzhuang, but she had to admit that Bailey Hongzhuang's talent in cultivation wasn't bad. Thinking back to when her cultivation was 3 levels higher than Bailey Hongzhuang was only at a disadvantage, but she wasn't completely powerless. With the help of the Primal Chaos Tablet, Bailey Hongzhuang's strength increased by leaps and bounds. On the other hand, she was tricked by Bailey Hongzhuang, causing her to not make any progress in the past 3 months. With her current situation, once she met Bailey Hongzhuang, she would still lack confidence. Thus, she could only place her hopes on Lan Jingquang. The Lan family had stood tall in the Shengxian continent for so many years, so they must have some methods to increase their strength. She had heard of it before, but it was extremely precious and only the most important people in the family could have it. Although she didn't know what it was, she knew that it must be a treasure. If she could obtain this inheritance, she would be full of confidence when she faced Bailey Hongzhuang. Hearing Lan Qingyan's words, Lan Jingquang's thin lips slightly pursed. His gloomy and handsome face revealed a complex and obscure expression. Seeing Lan Jingquang like this, Lan Qingyan's heart also felt a little apprehensive. Regarding her father's personality, she hadn't been able to figure it out for so many years. Almost every time she saw Lan Jingquang reveal such an expression, her heart couldn't help but feel apprehensive. Lan Jingquang kept staring at Lan Qingyan. After a while, he slowly opened his mouth. The family does have a secret technique that can help you increase your cultivation, but the pain you have to endure is not small. Usually, only the head of the family has the opportunity to accept it. Although you're now the future head of the family, you are still not. Hearing this, Lan Qingyin couldn't help but frown. Her hands, under her sleeves, gradually clenched into fists. Although her right hand had recovered, she still remembered the pain of losing her arm clearly. The last time she saw Bailey Hongzhuang, she was a complete loser. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had arrived at Blue Sun City, she must have been constantly mocking her. She absolutely couldn't bear to see Bailey Hongzhuang again as a loser. Moreover, Di Beichen would also come this time. The Lan family was her home ground. How could she lose to an outsider? Father, I will be the head of the Lan family sooner or later. This matter, you should have a way, right? Lan Qingyin abruptly raised her head. Her eyes flickered with a resolute, bloodthirsty light. This time, she absolutely cannot fail. No matter what, she must obtain this inheritance. Looking at Lan Qingyin's determined look, Lan Jingquang's eyes couldn't help but flash a trace of astonishment. In all these years, he had never seen Lan Qingyin with such a resolute appearance. After this incident, Qingyin's lands with her. He admired this ambition very much. Just like him, as long as he had his eyes on something, he must obtain it no matter what method he had to use. Now, he was somewhat grateful to Bailey Hongzhuang. If it wasn't for her, he didn't know when Lan Qingyin would be able to understand everything. Since this is something you must obtain, as your father, I will naturally do my best to help you obtain it. Chapter 2655. That old man Lan Hongtai had been trying to control him all these years, thinking that it would be fine as long as he didn't hand over the family head position. However, Lan Jingquang's life wasn't something that old man Lan Hongtai could control, as long as the family head position fell on Lan Qingyin. So what if he wasn't the family head in name? In the entire Lan family, who would dare to disobey him? Now, he wanted to put all his heart on Lan Qingyin and help her become the family head in one fell swoop. After receiving Lan Jingquang's answer, Lan Qingyin's face also revealed an excited and proud smile. Thank you, father. Lan Jingquang patted Lan Qingyin's shoulder. Don't worry, I will handle this matter. However, the pain of accepting the secret method is equally unbearable. If you can't bear it, then not only will you fail at the last step, your cultivation will also be weakened. You have to think about this carefully. Father, I have confidence. In these 3 months, I have been suffering a pain worse than death. I think the pain of the secret method won't be worse than what I had to endure before. Speaking of which, I really have to thank Bailey Hongzhuang for all of this. Lan Qingyin's eyes rippled with a trace of mockery and ridicule, but she still gritted her teeth and said these words. Although the pain had been relieved, the impression was still too deep. It was to the extent that she would often think of it in her dreams at night, waking her up with a start. Lan Jingquang saw a deep hatred in Lan Qingyin's eyes. It was just like him more than 20 years ago, so familiar and so ambitious. Since you are so confident, then I can rest assured. Wait here for my news. I will be there as soon as possible. Lan Jingquang looked at Lan Qingyin with a face full of smiles. After saying this, he strode out of Lan Qingyin's room. The divine ice snow pond would open in 2 days. They must hurry up. If they were a step slower, it would all be too late. However, after Lan Jingquang left, Lan Qingyin stared blankly at Lan Jingquang's departing figure. Her eyes were filled with disbelief, wondering if she had seen wrongly. After so many years, this was the first time she saw a ray of affection in Lan Jingquang's eyes. However, she clearly remembered that gaze just now. She couldn't have been wrong. After a momentary daze, Lan Qingyin's lips suddenly bloomed into a smile. She suddenly understood why her father didn't like her mother enough all these years, just like how he didn't like her always complaining to her mother. This was the real reason. Night fell, and a cool breeze blew. Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, and Mo Yunjue gathered together once again. Now that the Lan family had completely treated them as a group, there was no need for them to hide. I just received a piece of news. Mo Yunjue took a sip of tea and said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's gazes fell on Mo Yunjue. The Shurtian Pavilion's ability was indeed well-deserved. Their informants were spread all over the Shengxian continent. Even though they were being watched closely by the Lan family, Mo Yunjue's news had never been cut off. If he offended such an enemy, it would be impossible to guard against. Lan Qingyin seems to have some sort of operation tonight. Lan Jingquang, Lan Kaicheng, and the others all went to her residence. Chapter 2656. You don't know what's going on? Di Beichun raised his eyebrows. Lan Qingyin's sudden movement when the divine pond of ice and snow was about to open was obviously not a good thing. And Mo Yunjue shook his head. This matter was originally carried out behind the Lan clan's back. It's already good that I know about this. As for what's going on, other than Lan Jingquang's core members, I'm afraid no one else knows about it. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun both fell into silence. They were going to the Lan clan tomorrow, but Lan Qingyin suddenly made a move tonight. No matter how they looked at it, it didn't seem like she came with good intentions. However, they didn't know what kind of tricks Lan Qingyin would play. We and Lan Qingyin are rivals. It's expected that she would try all sorts of methods to deal with us. According to my guess, Lan Qingyin might want to take advantage of tonight to increase her cultivation. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips slightly curved. That elegant and refined face didn't reveal any worry. On the contrary, it was still indifferent and relaxed. With the experience of her previous life, she had some understanding of the methods that aristocratic families had. These methods were even inferior to those of 1,000 years ago. Forcefully increasing one's cultivation was also a method that aristocratic families would use at certain times. However, each family's method was different. The effects and side effects were also different, although she wasn't sure if her guess was correct. But at this time, this was the most likely possibility. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichun and Mo Yunjue couldn't help but look at each other. Their expressions were somewhat complicated. If that's really the case, then the Lan clan has really put in a lot of effort this time. Mo Yunjue's eyes suddenly darkened. He had heard of this kind of method to suddenly increase one's cultivation. However, the side effects were usually very big, so it wasn't used lightly. However, Lan Qingyin was the future head of the Lan clan. Naturally, the Lan clan wouldn't ruin Lan Qingyin's future because of her personal feelings. Therefore, there was only one possibility. The side effects were very small. This kind of secret technique was usually extremely precious and could not be used easily. The Lan family must have paid a huge price for it. Lan Qingyin is the young lord of the Lan family. It is not strange that the Lan family is willing to pay the price for her. Di Beichun's deep, dark eyes were clouded with haze. Originally, all this situation was within their expectations. They didn't expect such a thing to happen now. That could be a little complicated. Of course, how much Lan Qingyin's strength had increased was not what he cared about the most. What he cared more about was that everything Lan Qingyin was using now should belong to Bailey Hongzhuang. Compared to the gloomy expressions of Mo Yunjue and Di Beichun, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Lan Qingyin is now desperate. It seems that she also sees me as a very strong opponent. In order to defeat me, she has already used everything she has. Compared to the situation where Lan Qingyin had always looked down on her, Bailey Hongzhuang felt that she was more willing to see Lan Qingyin's current expression as if she was facing a great enemy. Even if Lan Qingyin used everything she had and used all the resources she could, in the end, she was still defeated by her. That kind of blow was the biggest and most difficult to bear. Chapter 2657. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two walked to the front of the Lan family's gate, the Lan family obviously knew that they were coming. Therefore, Great Elder Lan Borong was already waiting for them. When Lan Borong saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two, a joyful smile appeared on his face. Young Palace Master Bailey, young Sect Master D, young Tower Master Mo, welcome. When they saw Lan Borong again, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two were not unfamiliar with him. As the great elder of the Lan family, Lan Borong usually handled many of the Lan family's matters. Moreover, they had seen Lan Borong with their own eyes during the Battle of Zhuolu last time. Elder Lan, Bailey Hongzhuang, and the other two smiled. When Lan Borong saw Bailey Hongzhuang's familiar face, His eyes could not help but fluctuate a little. It had to be said that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two looked too similar. At this moment, when he looked carefully, it was as if the two of them had merged together. Although there were some fluctuations in his heart, Lan Borong did not show it. He smiled and said, "The three of you, please follow me. We have already arranged accommodations for the three of you and prepared a banquet to welcome the three of you." Although Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two were young, their identities could not be ignored. Tiangang Sect, Shitian Tower, and Wuji Palace. Once these three major forces joined forces, the entire Shangxian continent would tremble a little. Therefore, Lan Borong was very polite and did not dare to treat Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two as his juniors. Thank you. Lan Borong led Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two slowly to their accommodation. Along the way, he also introduced the environment and situation of the Lan family. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at every corner of the Lan family. It was so unfamiliar. In the past, her parents lived here. Originally, this should be an environment that she was very familiar with. However, in fact, she only felt an indescribable strangeness to this place. While they were walking, the disciples of the Lan family were also curiously sizing up Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. So this girl is Bailey Hongzhuang. She looks even younger than Lan Qingyan. I didn't expect her to be able to defeat Lan Qingyan. This is too unbelievable. Don't belittle yourself. If it weren't for Di Beichen and Mo Yinjue's help, Bailey Hongzhuang definitely wouldn't be a match for our young master. That's right. Bailey Hongzhuang poisoned and asked for help. She's just a vixen. In terms of strength, our young master is miles ahead of her. In front of the clan, even if there were some who were dissatisfied with Bailey Hongzhuang, at this moment, all of that had dissipated. All that was left was the thick enmity towards Bailey Hongzhuang. Fortunately, Great Master Yu Siqing successfully cured the young master of the poison. Otherwise, Bailey Hongzhuang would really be showing off her strength. I didn't expect her to have a heart as venomous as a scorpion with such a pretty face. The disciples of the Lan family obviously hated Bailey Hongzhuang to the extreme. At this moment, they didn't cover up their discussion at all, and Bailey Hongzhuang heard it clearly. In fact, no one in the entire Lan family welcomed Bailey Hongzhuang's arrival. The news of Lan Qingyan being poisoned couldn't be concealed at all. Therefore, during this period of time, the power of the Lan family was also affected. After all, losing a young master was a huge loss. Wife. Chapter 2658. Bailey Hongzhuang met Di Beichen's deep eyes that were filled with concern. The corner of her lips curled up slightly, and her faint smile revealed indifference and peace. She shook her head without a trace, indicating that she was fine. This scene was within her expectations. Just like the resentment and indifference of the Lan family towards her, she similarly had no other feelings towards the Lan family. This was the place where her father grew up, but it was also the place where she almost lost her life. In her heart, perhaps even a foreign place could not be compared to it. Di Beichen's eyes revealed a hint of darkness. His displeased and cold gaze swept across the surroundings, and a ruthless and bone-chilling intent was instantly emitted. Looking at Di Beichen's gaze, the surrounding Lan family disciples, who were originally aggressive, only felt a chill run down their spines. It was as if they had fallen into an ice cellar, and even the words that were about to leave their mouth were forcefully suppressed. They no longer had the courage to speak. When they looked at Di Beichen again, there was a hint of fear in their hearts. Previously, they did not take it seriously. Now that they saw Di Beichen's aura, they understood that the young lord of Tiangang Sect was not someone to be trifled with. One look was enough to make people feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. This was the difference between them. Naturally, Lan Borong also noticed this scene, and he could not help but feel a little emotional. As the young lord of Tiangang Sect, Di Beichen had already made a name for himself a few years ago. Among the younger generation, Di Beichen was definitely one of the most dazzling people. Lan Qingyan's reputation among the aristocratic families was just like Di Beichen's reputation among the sections. Not to mention her strength, Di Beichen's temperament was still better. Most importantly, Di Beichun was really protective of Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang had yet to make a move, but Di Beichun had already made his move. It seemed that the rumors were true. Di Beichun's heart was on Bailey Hongzhuang. Under Lan Borong's lead, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two arrived at their residence. The three of them were the distinguished guests of the Lan family. Naturally, their residence was arranged to be extremely comfortable and luxurious. On one hand, it showed the importance of the Lan family to them. On the other hand, it also showed the Lan family's background. You all can rest here for now. I will send someone to invite you over for lunch. By then, the young lord and the elders of the Lan family will be present. Lan Borong's face had a faint smile as he introduced to Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. After hearing this, Lan Borong's departure, with Lan Qingyin's head, Ses. After Lanza's of Ses, Lan with two of them with him of Ovs. S is right, S is the S is rights. Of this of. Mo Yunja narrowed his long, narrow eyes. His lips curled into a faint smile, and a cold glint blossomed from the depths of his eyes. Logically speaking, with the status of the three of them, everyone should have come out to welcome them when they came to the Lan clan today. However, only Lan Borong came. This was undoubtedly a loss of face for them, as if they were insignificant people. On the other hand, the Lan family's disciples' attitude was probably incited by someone. Otherwise, a few disciples of the Lan family wouldn't have dared to say such things so brazenly. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes darkened. Lan Qingyan had suffered so much previously. This time, she must be thinking of how to teach me a lesson. The cold reception in the morning was nothing, but I'm afraid this lunches will not be easy.